Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. At this time, we will call our joint meeting of the Suffolk City Council and School Board to order. I'd like to start with some introductions, or before introductions, like I say, just welcome everyone. The two bodies getting together. It's the first time since the first of the year. We've got two new school board members, a new council member with us. So extra welcome to you three. It gives us the opportunity to collaborate, improve our communication, and these two bodies together are dedicated to one thing, and that's working together to serve our citizens and educate our kids. That's what it's all about. So moving forward, I'll just start with my council members as we go around the room. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, starting with the Vice Mayor.
Yes, I'm Vice Mayor Lou Ward. I represent the National Borough.
And just so you know, when this speaker system, which is the opposite of what we have out on the dais, push your button, and when it's green, you'll be live to talk. Okay? Councilman Rector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm John Rector, and I represent the Suffolk Borough.
Thank you. I'm Leodis Williams, and I represent the Wellerville Borough.
Shelley Butler Barlow, Chuckatuck Borough.
Tim Johnson, represent the prettiest borough, the Holy Neck Borough, in southern end of the city.
Ebony Wright, and I represent Sleepy Hill Borough.
Leroy Bennett represents the Cypress Borough.
All right, that takes care of our council members. To my left, obviously, is our city manager, Mr. Elmore. Now, we have two appointees with us today, our city attorney, William Hutchings, and our city clerk, Miss Erica Dawley. And I'll leave it up to the manager to introduce the staff that he has with us.
Good afternoon. Also with us today, we have, of course, Police Chief Danny Bowie, who's going to protect us all. We also, speaking tonight on some of our topics, we'll have Kevin Wine, Director of Planning, Mark Furlow, Director of Parks and Recreation, and also in the crowd, we have Deputy City Manager Kevin Hughes and Deputy City Manager Aziz Felder and Director of Capital Projects Gary Jones. And most importantly, Director of Finance Charles Meek.
The guy with the budget.
Thank you.
And all these individuals will be available to answer any questions you have, later on in the evening once we get started. At this time, Madam Chair, Ms. Heather Howell.
Good evening. My name is Heather Howell. I am the chair of the Suffolk Public School Board this year. I represent the Sleepy Hill Borough, and I will move to my left and start with Board Member Fields.
I'm Valerie Fields. I represent the Nansemond Borough.
Good evening, everyone. I am Tyron Riddick, and I represent the historic Suffolk Borough.
Hello, everyone. Sean McGee. I'm the Vice Chair. I represent Wellerville Borough.
Good evening. I'm Kim Slingleff, and I proudly represent the Chuckatuck Borough.
Good evening. My name is Domry Brittingham, and I also represent the beautiful and scenic Holy Neck Borough.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Jenkins, and I represent the Cypress Borough.
Thank you. And then I will let Dr. Gordon speak and introduce who he would like to from our staff, and of course, Attorney Waller, who is always here to keep us in line.
John Gordon, Division Superintendent. We also have to my right Ms. Tasha Gardner, our School Board Clerk, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent. I see Ms. Wendy Forsman, our Chief Financial Officer, who will be providing our budget overview. To her left is Dr. Sinette Bird, our Chief of Schools. On the front row, we have Dr. Akima Branch, our Chief Academic Officer. Directly behind her, we have Dr. Leitner, Director of Curriculum Instruction. To her right is Dr. Catherine Pichon, Director of Elementary Leadership. Behind Dr. Leitner is Mr. Littlefield, our Director of Technology. To his right is Dr. Avery, Director of Human Resources. Directly behind her is Dr. Skinner, Director of Curriculum and Technical Education. To his left is Mr. Terry Napier, our Director of Facilities and Planning. And we also have Dr. Cassandra McNair, our Director of Special Education. That is our staff that is in the building this hour. Oh, and Dr. Brown, who I couldn't see. Yeah, two people, I'm sorry, yeah. Dr. Brown, our Chief of Administrative Services, who takes care of all of our problems and issues, and directly behind him is Ms. Antoinette Dickens, our Communications and Community Engagement Officer.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to our discussion items. As you probably know, we have 5 items to talk about today. These were developed over the last, or determined over the last 45 or 60 days with a lot of conversation between the manager and the superintendent, along with city council, and I'm sure with the school board. And I think all of them are right on time and going to be very relative to what we have coming before us and have to contend with in a very short time. So the first item is the proposed SBS School Board 25-26 operating and capital budget, and I will turn that over to Dr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor Duman. I'm going to call to the podium our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Wendy Forsman. We originally did this presentation on February 27, 2025, so we are not going to spend the same amount of time that we did on that date, and I will kind of tee things up before I turn it over to Ms. Forsman for specific details. The first slide that you see, and Wendy, if you want to advance it as I talk, the first slide that you see is our overall agenda. Talks about the process and timeline, our plan, the challenges that we deal with, our unfunded needs, and the structure of the budget book. The next slide that you see is our budget process overview. What many people do not know is that our budget process actually begins the first day of school. We kind of push things back a couple of days to September because we want to get everyone acclimated. Then we receive feedback from the staff and the board in September and October, 2 opportunities for stakeholder feedback in December and March. Our directors and coordinators and then our chiefs kind of work during the entire winter months of November through January. Then our school board members have additional feedback in February and March. We provide a process overview to the board and city council. That's kind of what we're doing right now in the month of April, hopefully with an approval by the city council in the month of May. Then the school board adoption would be during that May and June window. Our common themes, these are things that we've actually tried to build upon and scaffold for the last couple of years, including the safety of our students and staff, with the Virginia Literacy Act, our student growth and literacy, and of course, every year we've made the promise to raise our staff salaries and overall pay. This year, one of the things that we did differently is we wanted to tie it directly to our school board strategic plan, Destination 2028. So you can see under the category of student achievement, one of the things that we had to do was to add additional English language learner teachers. That's our fastest growing student population in Suffolk Public Schools. Our instructional data, and because it's our largest elementary school, Florence Bowser dictated that we needed a reading specialist. Dual enrollment costs, thank you to Dr. Skinner and all of our high school principals as we're trying to work more towards our kids getting greater opportunities with associate degrees. Some of the things that we previously had on our all-in grants, such as summer school, in-person tutoring, et cetera, Saturday Academy, these are things that we wanted to move over from grants to our operating budget. Our instructional data also stated that we needed to add an additional academic coach to Kings Fork Middle School, regional tuition for some of our programs, such as the Governor's School of the Arts, as well as CSEP. And I kind of spoken about literacy and math software from our new SOLs. Under the categories of climate and culture, a big topic that the city manager and Chief Bowie and I have had several conversations about was our request for additional elementary school resource officers. We originally had requested 11, but we understand there's going to be some staffing challenges there, so that more than likely will be a phase-in process. We wanted to be able to improve transportation that is not only cost, but as overall efficiency. The day after the school board meeting, we added a staffing specialist to the Human Resources Department. This was going to be our way to be able to address the teacher shortage. It was going to be our second year of having zero-eye security, which was our software that we have installed on our cameras that detect weapons, and the cost that we have to have per the Virginia High School League to have athletic trainers. Under human and fiscal resources, the state mandated that we provide a raise of a minimum of 3% to all of our full-time staff, which will bring our starting teacher's salary up again to $56,975. If we do receive any additional funds for the state, it's going to be our goal to be able to raise that teacher salary scale. We also know, as the city is well aware of the overall problem that we have with inflation, and the school board had put a request in for an increase in the budget for attorney services. The next slide shows our conscious effort that we have had to increase our teacher salaries, 23% over the last 5 years. You can see the jump that we made of about $1,800 in our proposed budget for this year that was recently approved by the school board. Some of the challenges, unfortunately, when we do receive our calc tool and the governor's proposed budget during the third week in December, unfortunately, there was a minimal increase from what we originally saw from the state. We all have to do the Virginia Literacy Act, as I mentioned earlier. That is an unfunded mandate when they request that we do specific things for professional learning. However, there is not always funding for that. The governor's all-in grant funding cliff that officially ends on June 30th, 2025. The cost of transportation, it is our job to make sure that regardless of the student's disability, that we have to be able to find ways to transport all students to school, which may also mean using our white fleet, because not all of our students have the ability to ride the bus for the safety of themselves as well as the safety of staff. And once again, you can see the big red word there in the middle of inflation. Ms. Forsman and I wanted to detail some of the things, the $5.8 million from the all-in grant that ends on the 30th. These were some of the things that we were looking at moving over to our operating budget, such as tutoring, Saturday Academy, some of the incentives that we provided for attendance. Some of our positions that had to end were personnel for attendance support, literacy coaches and programs. We wanted to prioritize instruction. The summer school, Suffolk Public Schools is very proud that we do not charge our families for summer school. And one of the things that's kind of still up in the air is Canvas, the learning management system, or data warehouse that has been provided and paid for by the state over the last 4 years. That's one of the things that is still up in the air right now, if that's going to be covered by the state. In our conversations with our school board, we also want to list out some of the things that we were not able to do. This was some of the tough choices that we had to make, such as virtual instructional tutoring. As we know, there's a national teacher shortage, so we actually had university instructors and virtual tutors that were partnering with all of our long-term subs to make sure we had the strongest instructional model. Dr. Branch had originally requested 7 English language learning teachers, but we were only able to afford 3. Some of the additional teachers are lower class sizes at the middle school and high school. That also included some of our teacher assistants. There were requests coming from Dr. King under Dr. Brown's office for additional school counselors, a science specialist, and an additional pre-K classroom. When Dr. Pichon opens up pre-K, we are literally full within a matter of weeks. Conversations that I had with Chair Howell and Vice Chair McGee and Mr. Riddick about middle school baseball and softball, we were kind of estimating that to be $1.2 million, but we may have some additional strategies that we can use that may lower that cost. Additional clerical based on the metrics that we were seeing in our elementary schools. Mr. Littlefield had put the request in for additional instructional technology resource teachers. That's what ITRTs stand for. It is part of our cycle to have computer and telephone replacement, copier replacement, and school buses. As the city knows, we actually pay for our own school buses. However, there's still supply chain issues as we expect some of the buses that we've ordered in the past to probably arrive in November. And these are things that we actually ordered in 2024. Also, the increasing maintenance on aging schools. As everyone is aware, our preventative and proactive maintenance money of $3.575 million that we receive each year from the city, that is actually being used to fund the Northern Shores expansion project. So when you add all of those up, the total unfunded needs, the tough choices and decisions that we had to make that we recommended to the school board is approximately $7.56 million. So with that executive summary, without taking a breath, I'm going to turn that over to you, Ms. Forsman, to talk about the proposed budget structure.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. Good evening. The structure of the budget book is organized. We want you to understand how it's organized. It's organized on informational and legal requirements. So it has those at the beginning, then an executive summary that gives you a brief overview with graphics about the budget. Then there's expenditures by program. So every single program that we have in the schools is detailed out behind that. And behind each program, or before each program, after the summary of that program and what it covers, is a list of the changes for that program. So if you go to any given page that has gifted education or general education elementary, you can see the changes to that program current year. It shows you the personnel changes as well as the changes to operational cost. So it's very clear why we're doing what we're doing. Then there's at the very end a glossary of terms for folks that don't understand some of the vernacular that happens in schools. Everything has its own vernacular, and so we wanted to make sure we had a glossary of terms. The titles on the program pages indicate the 7 categories as defined by the state. So if it says instruction before the title, it means it's included in instruction as far as the state is concerned. If it says technology, it's included in the technology area. If it says administration and health, it's going to tell you that it's in that area. So everything has a category right with the title page so you can understand where you can find it in the executive summary. All expenditures are placed in the program expenditure category provided by the state. The state defines where we put things. So it may not be logical to you or me, but the state defines where we have to code things. So you will find things like postage in building services. That's not where normally people would see that, but that's where the state requires us to code that. And so that's just an example of what you might see that you would go, why is that there? It's because the state requires it. And then certain programs are further broken down by level. So for instance, for general education, you'll see a consolidated page, and then directly behind that are pages that add up to that page. So you'll see general education, and then behind that elementary, middle, high school, and then athletics. Those add up to that front page to give you an overview of the program as a whole, but also by level. And then non-departmental items, that very last page in the book before the glossary, those are items that come to us for different programs every year. So for instance, we don't know where workman's compensation is going to hit. We don't know which department it's going to hit when we do the budget. We have no idea which department's going to have what. So what we do is we put it on that page, and then we allocate it out at the end of the year once we know which departments had the expenses. The same thing with unemployment cost. They're also there. Teacher cards are also there. We give a gift card for the teachers from school specialty every August for $100, and they have until January to spend that down for their classroom supplies. That is put on a single page so that we can see that broken out for all teachers rather than individual line items in each program so that it's buried and you don't know what it is. So we put it there on that page so that you can see it as a whole. It's a special thing we're doing for our teachers. There are 3 columns on every page of the programs, and then also in the executive summary. There's an actual column that tells you what we spent in 23-24. There's a revised column for current year budget. So as you know, a budget is a living document. Things change as we go. So when we publish that, we publish the most recent budget that we have. So that's the revised column for 24-25. And then there's a proposed column, and that column title changes as we move through this process. When we did this in February, it was proposed. When the board approved it in March, at the end of March, it became the approved book. After we receive the money and the city appropriates money back to us, then it becomes the adopted budget for the new year. So there are 3 different categories for that particular column. And the one you'll see in the books that you were delivered, the city council was delivered, and the school board currently say approved, because the school board approved it. Then there's a column for the increase or decrease over the previous revised column. Here in the book, as you can see, this is an example of what the changes look like at each program. You can see there's personnel changes in this program, what they are. In this case, 4 ELL teachers were moved from general education to prevention, intervention, and remediation. The state required us to do that, so we had to move them. So you'll see this on the page for general education. And then if you go to the page that says prevention, intervention, and remediation, you'll see where we added those same teachers. So it's just moved from one program to another based on what the state is requiring. And then all the other items there you can see, I won't read those to you, but basically every page that has a change has that. Our budget is people. So 84% of our budget, our total operating budget, 84% is people. It's compensation and benefits. As Dr. Gordon told you, we're trying very hard to make our salaries our #1 priority, to make sure that we can compete with other school divisions for teachers especially. And then the benefits rates are all set by the state. So the VRS rate for the retirement is set by the state. The long-term disability and the health insurance credit, all those are set by the state, and we have to remit those to the state as percentages of payroll. So we don't really set those rates. Those rates are set for us, and we're required to remit them. Then finally, operating costs make up 15.99% of the budget. For the operating budget, you can see here the $214 million budget that is approved. $179.9 million of that is salaries and benefits. So then that leaves about 16% of the budget for all operations. If we look at all the proposed budget or the approved budget at this point, you look at each fund, you can see that our increase for the operating budget is 4.98%. The grants fund is reduced by 41.51%, and that is primarily because the CARES Act is now gone for good. Everything, even the carryover is gone, and the all-in grant fund left us as well. The governor did not reinstate that grant for more years than he had originally had in there. So that $5.8 million has also gone. So that's the reason that that fund has gone down. And then the Food and Nutritional Services Fund is pretty much flat at 0.18%. So overall, it's a decrease of 1.62% of the budget. As Dr. Gordon said, the state mandated a 3% raise. His proposed and the school board's approved budget is a 3 to 3.5% based on years of experience. Our scales reward people for staying more than 20 years, and so at the 20-year mark, they get an extra 0.5%. And so that is why it says 3 to 3.5%. The folks at the top of the scale will get the cost of living raise. The additional positions, as in the approved budget, are the ELL teachers, the academic coach, and the reading specialist, which make up 5 positions. The staffing specialist for HR, which is 1. You may know that we've contracted to get help from HES, the company HES, for our custodial group. They started in February. We had 5 vacancies, so we removed those from the budget. HES picked up those 5 vacancies, and they're working really well in our schools. And then we had a part-time position reduction that had not been filled. And so total net positions of increase is 0.40. As Dr. Gordon said, the governor's proposed budget only provided an additional $3.2 million, most of which was for the raise. Our request to the city, as you know, is $7 million for a total city funding of $82.3 million, sorry. Safety, security, student achievement, and increased cost of operations are what make that up. This next slide shows you a breakdown side by side of what is state versus what we're asking for locally. And you can see the difference in costs, especially I'll point out the Virginia Literacy Act. There was about $63,000 additional added to the line for that. And the real cost of that is that plus the $546,000. So you can see that is a huge cost that was not funded by the state. In addition, the state has been reducing our regional tuition every single year for the last 4 years. They took the same pot of money and they've divided it over every single school division instead of just ours, and ones that have regional programs. And so we're receiving less and less money from that program every year. And as costs go up, unfortunately this year we had to put that difference in and ask locally for that difference. So the total is $7 million from the city, and then the state is $3.2 million. Other funds, we have the state revenue total is $130.2 million, or 60.81% of our budget. This is the operating fund. So your federal revenue here, we're talking about impact aid. We're talking about the reimbursement that we get, partial reimbursement for the ROTC programs, and you're talking about Medicaid reimbursement for certain services. There's the city appropriation at 38.44%. And then other funds are things like surplus sales, rental of school buildings, interest that we might receive on our bank accounts, those kinds of things, and they make up 0.24% of our budget. Our budget looks like this on the expense side. You can see that 72.79% of our budget is instruction and instructional supports. If you look in the executive summary on the page by program, you will see their first page on the left there is all your instructional supports. And what makes that up is on that page. Then you have administration and attendance, makes up 2.18% of the budget. Health and psychology, 1.44%. Pupil transportation, 4.61%. Facilities and maintenance, 25.7%, or 10.55% of the budget, sorry, 25.7 million, or 10.55%. Food nutritional services is 10.3 million, or 4.24%. And technology makes up 4.21%, or $10.2 million. Now bear in mind that technology, just for folks that aren't knowledgeable about this, there are 3 pages that make up technology. The bulk of that is for technology instruction, not for our technology department. So there are 3 pages at the end of the book that are technology. The total of those 3 is $10.2 million, but the majority of that is instructional technology, not our technology department. So I don't want anybody thinking we spend $10 million in our technology department, although Mr. Littlefield might like that. All right, so then here are the compensation investment. You can see the raise cost at $5.7 million, the additional positions, non-regular day programs, which includes our before and after school tutoring and our Saturday Academy. Our substitutes, part-time, and stipends, the net increase in those is $125,420 for a total of $7.3 million. Operational increases, I won't read each of these to you, but they're detailed out, each and every one, all the way down. And you'll see that the very last 2 lines, there's an operational net increase. Things that were not identified otherwise are $30,000. There are some small increases there for that weren't in specific items that I would detail out for you. And then also operational cost increase of $2.8 million. So our total is $10.1 million.
Okay, we're ready to move to questions. I think maybe we'll just go around the room and start with the vice mayor this time. And next time, if you have any questions, try to limit your comments to about 3 minutes. We're not on a really, really tight time schedule because we're not doing this on a council night, so we can stay here as long as everybody wants to stay here. But I'm thinking about 3 minutes for comments. Vice Mayor Ward, do you have any questions?
Well, the first part, when you said that, about the, I think the K, the pre-K, before it goes pre-K, and how many did you need it? I mean, did you get?
Vice Mayor Ward, one of the requests that we always have from Dr. P. Sean is to add additional pre-K teachers, which also would include a teacher assistant for that grade level for our students that are, under 5. The challenge is that we don't always have the capacity to be able to do that because all of our elementary schools have pre-K within them, and so we actually build that into the overall use of the school. But once we did add one and a teacher assistant last year, so that did increase our numbers. We are over 400 now that we have for pre-K, but the need from the city is always higher than that based on the total number of requests that we give. So our board knows that is something that we're going to try to put in every year as long as we have the capacity in our buildings to do so.
Because it increases.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilman Rector.
I'm good for the time being. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's fine. Councilmember Williams? Yes, I don't have anything. You good? Councilmember Butler?
I just wanted to ask, the funding from the federal and the state is, I don't even know what to call it right now, but, there's a lot of uncertainty. Do we have any kind of a contingency plan? I mean, places where, obviously you had a lot of stuff that you had to take off the table, but is there some flexibility if, things don't come through the way we hope?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Butler-Barlow. So the hard answer is no, because we're talking about $8.5 million on page 26 in our budget book. It gives you the breakdown of all of our title grants. We've been told, and I'm sure all of you all have read, that the United States Department of Education, with it potentially going away by December 31st of 2026, there is things that are still protected by federal law, such as special education, that might go into a different department, not 100% sure. There's also supports from Title I that may also go into a different department. But the challenge at all school divisions in the country, but specifically here in Virginia, is we have now lost our communications people that we have been talking to. We now have lost the relationships and the institutional knowledge. So when we're talking about $8.5 million that's listed for our title grants, plus the 1.1 of some of the federal revenue that you heard Ms. Forsman talking about, $9.6 million will be extremely difficult to be able to make up, especially when it comes to the overall supports that these schools need for our most needed students and most needed families. So The only contingency plan that we may have to come back to is to beg and ask you all for an additional $10 million, but we're hoping that it doesn't get to that point.
Councilmember Johnson. Go ahead, turn your microphone on, Tim. It's backwards for
A
one.
lot here to absorb, of course, and just pulling in. One concern, and of course, I'm probably not going to hear it here, but have we really done an adequate job with the buses at this point? Are we able to take what we've got, and are we, I don't know, it seems on the outside, I get more complaints about buses than anything else. Are we doing a better job this year? Are we able to allocate more funds so that we can actually make the system a little bit better?
So our transportation workers have actually had the highest increase over the 5 years since we've been here at roughly 44%. The challenge that we're seeing from the manufacturers is they're only making X number of buses total instead of making it on demand. So it depends on when your order comes in. So we've actually been waiting for buses for over a year. And once they reach that quota, based on whatever their costs are, they then shut down bus production for the next quarter or the next 6 months. So the conversations that Mr. Privet has had, Dr. Brown, Ms. Forsman, we didn't get the report telling us it's an estimation. Originally, the estimation was June, July. Now the estimation is now November. And I don't think it's based on if you have a larger school division. It could be based on the total number of buses that you've requested. One of the things that we put in place in the last probably 4 years is that every bus that we order, for example, now has air conditioning, which then may lead to a longer production time to do that. So, you know, there's really only 3 to 4 major transportation companies when it comes to making 53, 65, or 77 passenger buses. And we can constantly check and get into communication, but it's not just us. Then the second part is the board did just help us out with trying to find some ways to expedite the hiring process for our transportation department. We had some folks that had to wait a little while longer to get some of the information back when it comes to their background checks. But at our last meeting, after some great discussion, we are now allowed to do that. And we also have additional incentives for perfect attendance, not having any accidents, and also recruitment bonuses that we give to our current transportation workers if they're bringing someone else in to try to help to solve that. So we are always looking for drivers because every substitute is driving. You know, it's been a challenge because we have had buses, especially at the elementary level, that have been doing some double runs, and that's probably seen that more at elementary more than anything. That's probably some of the concerns that you've heard. I know the rest of our board members have heard as well. But the ones that we do have are extremely dedicated. They're taking on those double runs. We just wish we had a larger employment group of bus drivers that we could pull from in the pool.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wright.
Yes, I just have one question.
Yep.
It's great. Okay. On page 11, where you lose grant money, that it ends on the 30th, some of the items there are the personnel for attendance and support, and then incentives for attendance. Is that accounted for or included in the chart on page 29 for administration and attendance?
Ms. Ford, you want to answer that question for Ms. Wright?
So you're losing grant money effective June 30th. And part of that money that you're losing is for attendance support and incentives for attendance.
That's correct.
Is that absorbed? Did you account for that on page 29 under administrative and attendance? Is that?
Yeah, not all of it was absorbed. There was a plan, there's a plan that Dr. Brown's group has made for the attendance piece, but it's not extra cost. It's all already in the costs that we have there.
Got it. So it is accounted for here.
It is accounted for there.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
And just to add to that, we know this was actually additional support, Councilman Wright, that we were adding some part-time positions. We already had some of our clerical support. Dr. Brown already had one attendance liaison that was full-time that we plan on keeping in the operating budget. But this was additional help when it came to contacting folks, doing home visits, et cetera. So that's some of those tough decisions that we had to make since it was a grant-funded position.
Okay, so then with you adding that, my next question is, where attendance is concerned, does that have any bearing on accreditation, funding? So can we afford to scale back on attendance if it's not all absorbed from the grant money?
it's definitely going to be a delicate balance. Chronic absenteeism is a part of our accreditation and accountability system, but Dr. Brown's team already had a plan in place that we were using before the all-in grant money. And during that time, we never had chronic absenteeism be a deciding factor that did not allow us to make accreditation. So we're going to kind of resort back to that while still being able to use our attendance liaison that we're going to have remain in the budget to do that. That's also part of the reason why you saw some additional clerical positions that will be coming on board, because we're going to use them as well. So we have not only our school messenger and our text system that we use, but we also have our letters, phone calls, and home visits that occur out of Dr. Brown's team. So we're going to resort back to some of the things that we were doing with a little less foot soldiers to kind of make some of those home visits.
Copy, thank you.
Councilmember Bennett.
My question has already been answered. But what state level money was coming down in federal, so Councilman Barlow and I was on the same question on that one. So that's what I had.
Okay, I'll go ahead and wrap it up on the city council side and then turn it over to Chairperson Howell to see if there's any questions on the school board side. Just a couple of, okay, let's talk the SROs on page 27. You got, for the 11 SROs, there's 862,500 originally budgeted. And it's not that we're not, we're just changing the funding mechanism. I mean, I don't know how it evolved, but just so everybody understands that, you know, we allocated the money to the school system for SROs, and then you bill us for the same service that we provide. So we give the money back. So rather than do that, then I assume we'll be entering into a memorandum of understanding to provide those services. So they'll come out of your budget because you wanted to pay it, and they'll be in our budget. So the 862.5 was for the 11, and then we have the existing SROs that are in there now. And approximately how much is that?
Well, Charles is going to go through.
Charles is going to go through that? Okay, so that'll basically the 862.5 plus the SROs that are currently being budgeted. The Virginia Literacy Act compliance, the additional 546,000, is this a mandate? Is this an unfunded mandate that we get? Okay, that may be something that we need to, you know, we're not real crazy about unfunded mandates, so maybe it's something we can, you know, legislative, we can try to provide some lobbying there. The starting salary, I think you just mentioned, was going to be 56,975, and I believe in the budget it's showing 55,141, if I'm mistaken. But anyhow, so it'll be up higher than what's in the what was in your original budget.
That may be last year's starting salary. The
Was that
51,
last year's?
That may be last year. So
Okay.
the very far right-hand column, before you get to increase or decrease,
Okay.
would be this year.
Oh, what was I going to say? Yeah, so the security and then the total budget in the security was 3,998,000, almost, you know, like a couple pennies short of 4 million compared to 2.2 million the year before. That's a 33.5% increase. So I guess we can talk about that later, but I thought it was just kind of jumped out. Not that I have anything against the security part of it. The budget itself, I mean, it looks fine, but just to put everything into perspective, over the last 2 years, you know, the budget's gone from 175 million to 204 million. The average per student's gone from about 12,000 to 14,000. So we're trying to do what we need to do to make it work, but those are, you know, pretty substantial increases. And I know we got inflation and keeping up with salaries, but for our public to know, you know, our citizens to know also that, you know, the efforts being made to fund the request of the school system to do what we need to do. And with that,
Mr. Mayor?
I think that's all I got. Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
have a follow-up question since we went back
Yes,
to
ma'am.
page 27. So the school asked for 11 additional SROs, and I know that we're going to phase in that amount, but just for the public's knowledge, what do we plan to do to kind of cover that gap between what they asked for and what we're actually providing?
Well, I think we've had some of that discussion in our public safety committee too. I mean, the bottom line is, we have limited resources within the police department. We have to keep officers on the street, we have to keep our citizens safe, and I'm not saying don't need to keep our students safe also, but we're down to elementary level. So the reality of it is, it would be impossible, not so much to fund 11 SROs, it would be difficult to find 11 bodies. So the plan is, I believe, to do 4 and then try to phase them in cooperation with the police chief to get some more. I know there's been some discussion with the sheriff's department also to see if we can use some resources there. So, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, of course, last week, and that's a good question, last week, Dr. Gordon and myself, along with the police chief, along with the sheriff, met up in our office to talk about what other opportunities we have as it relates to the elementary schools, SROs, and those that we could provide and those that we can't. Now, in working with the sheriff informed us that they stop by each school for a short period of time each day. We also talked about what can we do from a police standpoint for those that we may or may not have. Now, we have elementary schools and high schools very close to each other. We have middle schools close to elementary schools where we already have SROs in those schools. But also we have areas in our traffic zones or our zones that we patrol that if we have, a lot of times our officers may be doing paperwork. They may be sitting idle and not moving. And if they're going to be sitting idle, our thought was, in lieu of sitting in a shopping center, let's sit in a school property. So we have a presence there when they're down. So these are the things that we talked about the other day. I thought we had a very good conversation that day, and I think when we all walked out of the room, I think we were all in agreement of some of the things we can. I don't want to speak for Dr. Gordon, but I thought we were pretty good there. So yes, there's a lot of talk that we've had, or a lot of conversation that we've had, that how do we address this prior to phasing clear in? And of course, as we've said a couple times in the Education Committee, and then also one-on-one, 11 officers off the street at one time is a big impact to us. We think we can phase them in over time. And Charles was going to speak to this a little bit as part of how we address the budget too. So.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, do you have any other comments from council members? If not, Madam Chair, do I check with the board?
Okay. Really quickly, before we get so far past it, people forget what I'm talking about. I wanted to offer insight too to Mrs. Butler Barlow. In addition, in regard to the $9 million roughly from state and federal, regarding federal more specifically, I don't know that it's commonly known, but federal law dictates how we provide services for students with disability, right down to transportation, supplemental services like OT, PT, speech, how many teachers or how many students a teacher is allowed to have on their caseload, what hour, really down to how many minutes they need of each subject, but they don't fully fund us, even now. So to come back from losing that federal funding that's already incomplete, I'm not even sure how we would do that. You would think if the law dictates a teacher can only have 10 students in her classroom and Hill Point has 30 students with the IEPs and we need 3 teachers, they'd pay for 3 teachers, but they do not. I want to start to my right this time. So with Board Member Jenkins, do you have any input you want to offer?
I just want clarity on something. So our Councilwoman Wright has already asked one, but on that same page, cutting the tutoring, the Saturday Academy, summer school, Canvas, the literacy coaches, all aid our students to doing the best that they can be. And with that being cut, are we absorbing anything that we can get any of this back? Because we need that for our students. Every student did not come out being an A student. We need to support them. And so I'm just wondering, can you speak on that? Any of these will be added.
Yeah, all those things are actually still in. That's what we're kind of referring to on page 27 when we talk about grant funding ending. So we originally were funding those things with the all-in grant, but those are the information, if you remember from our presentation, that we're actually adding into our operating budget. So this is why you see Saturday Academy, for example, being $200,000 from the local amount that we're going to use because the board has supported us continuing with Saturday Academy. We actually last year had to reduce the total amount of sessions that we had some in order to be able to ensure that we could fund it throughout the entire time. And I think we have 2 sessions left because we always try to end Saturday Academy as an example during the week before SOL testing starts. So yes, we will be absorbing that into the budget to continue for 25-26.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Brittingham?
Thank you. I think the things in the budget that I was most concerned about that I have talked about at board meetings and at my town hall have to do with the teacher raise and the SROs. I'm happy to see that we have asked for 11, and I understand that it's a process to get to 11. 4 is a good place to start this year. I would like to see us being able to add on 4 more the subsequent year. You can't put a price tag on school safety, and this is one of the big items I think that we can put in place, having SROs dedicated to our schools. I'm hoping as we move forward, we can also substantially make sure that we have dedicated SROs that are at our middles and high schools, not that they're being shared, but that they are assigned directly to those schools. And I just would like to see more for teacher raises. I don't think that 3.5% is enough. I would like to see that we were closer to that 5.5%. I also know that we've got SOQ bonuses potentially coming, which would be above and beyond the raise that's in the budget. So hopefully we will see the state bring those through and we can give our personnel that touch students on a daily basis a $1,000 bonus as an appreciative measure for the hard work that they do each day. So thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarity for City Council, we have dedicated SROs at our middle and high schools. They respond to an elementary and only leave their post if there's an emergency at an elementary school. So we're not yet at the point where we're officially sharing SROs that are not assigned to a secondary school. They only go to the elementary in the event of an emergency. So we do have dedicated SROs at all of our secondary schools. Board Member Slingwa.
Thank you. So the SROs are also a big hot point for me. That was one of the top initiatives that I was pushing for, was SROs in all of our schools. So I understand the capacity with regards to staffing of the police force and needing to gradually phase it in. My question would be, if initially we can you can accommodate for 4 officers, when we're talking about a phase in, are we talking about phase in over months or years based upon the historic hiring of officers and what that entails? Could you educate the board a little bit so that we can understand, can an officer come in through training and then be placed in a school, or do they have to be on the streets for a period of time before that? What is there additional training for them to be in the schools? And realistically, are we expecting them to be provided within the year, or we're talking about multiple years? Because when I look at this budget on page 27 that keeps being referenced, there's $862 that we're asking for, $862,000 we're asking for from the city for 11 officers. So if we're saying right now that we're going to get 4 officers for this budget year, if that's a realistic expectation, then that number is going to change drastically, which then makes.
Disappears.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, that's the number, it's gonna go way out of your budget totally.
Right. Well, what I'm saying though is we're asking for this, and I understand that it's going to be taken out before it is even allocated to the school system, because you're going to take care of that. But if that is money that we are asking for from the city for our budget, even though it's not going to be appearing in our account, if we're really not able to get those 11 that we're asking for, in my mind, I'm thinking we're already taking a deficit for many things that we can't fund. If we're only going to be able to fund 4 officers, are we able to then look at that money, and if there's $400,000 of it, $500,000 of it that we can't put towards officers, then as a board member, I would like to see that money somewhere else in the unfunded categories that we're asking for. Since we were allocating towards officers but not going to be able to get that, I would like to be able to add that somewhere else and take some of our unfunded items off of that list and move it into the actual budget. Does that make any sense?
It would make a little bit of sense, but you don't know exactly how many we're going to be able to provide, so it'd be kind of the same way you do at the end of the year, where we had this much left over. And then where do we want to put it in the school's budget the following year? You know, but it's all, I mean, it's all one pot for us. We're agreeing to provide the officers, so that expense is going to roll on to us. So within the manager's budget, if he is allocated, you know, budget-wise, and I don't know what he's going to allocate budget-wise, come to think, I don't know what, if he's allocated all of that into our budget, just transferred it all, then yeah, possibly at the end of the year, you look at it and say, you know, we only got 4, so you didn't need the 862. You only needed 350. What are you going to do with the other $500,000 that you might have could have given us versus maybe we spend it on something else? You know, I don't know.
To answer a lot of these questions are arising about SROs, it might be an opportunity for us to go ahead and present what we've done to answer some of the questions that may not need to be asked, or would provide an understanding of where we are. That's the tricky part when we start getting in between and asking questions. So I think we can maybe address some of that where we're at.
And same thing.
So just for clarity, if we have any questions or comments other than SRO related, we're going to continue with our last 3 board members. So Vice Chair McGee?
I have no questions, thanks.
Mr. Riddick?
I have no questions at the moment.
Board Member Fields?
I have no questions.
Okay.
All right, moving right along, our next item will be the city manager's proposed fiscal year 2025-26 operating budget. Mr. Manager?
Yes, Mayor, Madam Chair, members of council, and members of the board. To give you a little background on how we approach our budget, just a little, and you probably are aware of this. We start in December with all the departments putting together a budget, which gets submitted to our Department of Finance, along with we receive the school's initial early request before, as we're working along this process, maybe a little bit later than the departments get in. But with that, we meet with each department director and their staff on what's being requested. We also have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Gordon and Wendy and Terry at the same time, and we go through what may be requested at that point. So we get an idea, and then, of course, we get our revenues in the March era, and then we start doing the magic, as we call it. Of course, there's always more desires than there is funding. And I think we all recognize that. There's always a need for more positions than what we can actually afford. We also, as you do, want to protect our current employees and be competitive with the region as we talk about compensation. So we work through that. Now, it becomes the city manager's budget at that time, in which it then gets submitted to city council, which was done last Wednesday. We had, as part of the city council work session, we presented the city manager's budget at that time in detail. With that, we tried to address all the needs. What you'll hear in a little bit, if we sum it all up, pretty much we've met the school requests, except we took the, except with the SRO's requests that we've provided for, but we've switched how we're handling the payment. We're just absorbing the expenditure of those within our budget. Now, there's also a certain amount, and when you take part of those requests, those that we have not provided and those that we're already providing, we're just pulling that funding back as expenditures on our side. So when we take a look at the 7, it's going to be a different number. It's going to be less when we look at that. Now, also, as you're aware, as part of the JFK grant, we have to meet certain obligations there, operational, and what we provide you percentage-wise of our revenues and the growth of our revenues. We need to continue to provide you the same percentage of costs or of funding that we did before, even though we've had a growth in our costs. So that also drives a certain number, which actually, when you look at your SRO's reduction and what we have to do under the grant, you actually come out further ahead by about 200,000, which could go to answer your question of having some additional funding for unmandated costs. But we have to meet a certain percentage of that. With all that said, I'm going to turn it over to Charles Meek, Director of Finance, and he'll give you a detailed run-over. Now, we're not giving you the full presentation we did last Thursday. We're concentrating basically on the school division's portion of our budget, so you don't have to worry about trash trucks at $400,000 a pop. Talking about buses, it takes a fire truck 3 years to get here, so which is $2 million a pop. But anyway, with that, I'll flip it to Charles, and then we'll be here to answer any questions that you may have.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Chair and Vice Chair, and members of the school board. As the manager mentioned, our budget, proposed budget this year has been submitted to City Council last Wednesday. When we were putting the budget together this year, we developed some priorities, and they were to maintain service levels in our growing city with no tax rate increase, maintain competitive compensation, and address the city's staffing needs. We want to enhance community services, health, and public safety, invest in public education in the school system, strengthen our infrastructure and improve quality of life, and certainly the schools are part of that, and then preserve the city's strong financial position or standing. The proposed budget, we have 17 funds, and so the total budget is proposed at $942,652,843 across all funds. That's a 8% increase over the current year. The schools fund is a part of that, which would include the federal and state funds that pass through from the city to the schools, as well as the local funding support for the school division, proposed at $243,413,773. If we look at general fund revenue, which is where we, generate funding to provide support for school operations. This year, we're projecting about a $15.8 million increase in general property tax revenue. Now, that consists of real estate tax revenue. Our assessor provided a report about a month ago. Assessed value of residential and commercial properties is up about 6.5% overall. So that's driving about $12.3 million of this $15.8 million. The rest of it is from personal property taxes, and that's on cars, trucks, business equipment, and machinery and tools. And that is projected to increase about $3 million next year. Other local taxes, which include more of your consumer-based taxes, your sales tax revenue, meals, lodging, admissions, things of that nature, projecting about a $3.5 to $6 million increase next year. Fees, charges, and miscellaneous revenue for city services is pretty much flat. State and federal funding, and this is city funding, projecting almost a $2.5 million increase there. That is primarily for social services programs administered here in the city. And then our fund balance and transfers, reduction there of about $3.5 million. And this is primarily due to us taking less money out of the fund balance next year for capital projects. Overall, proposed budget does not include a real estate tax increase. We maintain the real estate tax rate at $1.07 per $100 of assessed value. City employees would receive a 3% cost of living adjustment. We do have some market adjustments, regrades, and reclassifications for positions that are determined to be below market averages in the region, or they've had some changes in job duties that have warranted increased pay. We're proposing 46 new positions to address workload and service demand in certain departments throughout the city. We've got some new staff for new facilities coming online. About 50% of these positions are actually related to public safety departments, police, fire and rescue, the sheriff's office, as well as the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. We've increased funding for our community health and safety partners, the health department, the Western Tidewater Community Services Board, which provides mental health services in the city, as well as some of our local and regional nonprofit organizations who provide critical services to citizens in need here in Suffolk. Local funding for school operations, we're proposing a $5.8 million increase, and we will talk to you just a next slide or two about that. $117.7 million has been allocated for capital projects through our capital improvement program. We have 2 school-related projects that are included in that. We are proposing a rate increase for our weekly trash pickup by $4.75 per month, and this is due to increasing costs for solid waste disposal and recycling, and also we have a great need to replace refuse trucks in the city. So looking to get on a regular replacement cycle with those to buy about 5 or 6 trucks per year. The utility fund for our water and sewer system of rate adjustment is being proposed to the water and sewer rates and meter service charge. It will work out to about a 3.7% average increase to the combined water and sewer bill, not including any charges from the Hampton Roads Sanitation District under this budget proposal. And we've complied with all of our financial policies. We're in great standing there, and that is to help us maintain our AAA bond rating, which saves us money when we issue bonds for capital projects. Looking specifically at schools funding, investing in public education, the budget proposes $81.2 million in local funding for school operations. That's the $5.8 million increase next year. This would include, in addition, it would include 4 new school resource officers for elementary schools, which would be, the funding for that would be included in the police department operating budget. We would not be requiring Suffolk Public Schools next fiscal year to reimburse the city for any of the 4 new elementary school SROs, as well as the middle and high school SROs that are currently serving the school division. We have $13.1 million in capital funding for the Northern Shores Elementary School addition and the school administration building project included. We're covering about $11.5 million in debt service for previous schools' capital projects, and we've built in funding for the schools administration building and the operations building on Bright Lane leases. So just going back to the SRO funding, In previous years, we would provide the school division with local funding support for operations. And then at the end of the fiscal year, the schools reimburse the city for those SROs, for their salary and benefits for the time that they spent working in the school buildings. And that typically would work out to about 9 to 10 months of the year, which was about, this past year, we've budgeted a little over $800,000. That now will not be required to be paid back to the city. Our next steps, we'll be holding a public hearing on April the 16th to receive citizen comment and any direction from City Council on the proposed budget and the related ordinances that go along with the budget. On May 7th, we will have a public hearing on what's called the effective rate increase due to the reassessments, or property reassessments increasing more than 1%. We have to hold a public hearing unless we're going to offset the tax rate through a reduction. And we'll be looking for budget adoption that evening, which would be ahead of the May 15th state requirement for schools funding to be adopted. And with that, I will try and answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Meek. Madam Chair, if you'd like to start with the school board, since we're presenting our budget.
Sure. I will start with Board Member Jenkins to my right, if you have any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Does the city have like their rainy day fund? How much do you have in your rainy day fund, and what do you normally do with that?
We have, in our unassigned fund balance, it's over $100 million. And that money is there in case of emergencies. We also have, as part of that, a budget stabilization pot of funds for emergencies that come up, whether it's a weather event or some kind of economic downturn that we can draw upon if necessary. We have a financial policy that requires us to keep 20% of our budgeted governmental funds in fund balance. And so that's where the $100 million, or a little over $100 million comes from.
Okay.
We also have a capital reserve fund, which is a part of what we call our assigned fund balance. And so if we have surpluses at the end of the year, and we've met our 20% fund balance requirement, those funds, 50% of those funds can fall down into the capital reserve fund, which we can then use to cash fund capital projects. And we've allocated about half of that money in the CIP over the next 5 years.
Okay, what is the name of that line item? Is it called rainy day fund? What is
No,
it?
it's called the unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
It's in our annual comprehensive financial report, which is available online. And then the capital reserve funds are sitting in what's called the assigned fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add a little bit to that, Charles, of course, with our policies of the 20% and the 2.5%.
For the budget stabilization.
Budget stabilization, those policies are set, and they are set because, working with our financial advisors to ensure we maintain our AAA rating. If we start dipping into those funds, we jeopardize our AAA rating, bond rating. So I just want to make sure that everyone realizes if you touch that, there's consequences.
Thank you. Board Member Brittingham.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Board Member Slingla.
I do not have any questions at this time, thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair McGee.
Madam Chair, quick question on the MOA we're going to do with the SROs. I know when we had our education meeting, I think Dr. Gordon, you stated that some of that money is used for off-duty and extracurricular sporting events. Can we speak to if the city's going to absorb those costs?
Charles, I believe we did not.
No, we have not accounted for absorbing any cost of like off-duty officers who provide service during school football games or athletic events.
Did we pull any of that?
We have not pulled any money for that, no.
But again, as we look at the SRO cost, if you take a look with 800-some thousand for the 11, you take a look at 9 others that we already have, including Charlington Woods, that equates to about $1.5 million to $1.6 million based on a pro rata approach. Hopefully my math is correct. I think it is. So if you take a look at that, and then take a look at the 1.2 million that we went from 7 to 5.8, you'll see there's another to the almost 400,000 that we didn't pull from you because we then, of course, we're obligated by the JFK grant to provide a certain amount.
As the, when we signed the JFK grant, there's a requirement in there that we maintain or increase the percentage of local revenue for school operations during that building construction time period. And so when we started that project, it was about 27.1% of local revenues that were provided to the school system. And so we're maintained that over the last few years. And as the budget or as our revenue increases, the dollar amount of that 27% increases. And so this year that works out to about the $5.8 million.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Riddick?
Thank you. I do have a question. Did we collaborate to apply for the recent grant that is available from the state that would have helped us for the fiscal year 2026 for school resource officers or school safety officers? And that's something that either governing body could have applied for. And I know this, since there's something that was already being discussed and how we were going to financially make things happen, there's money out here that's sitting there. So I was wondering, have we made any steps in towards gathering those funds?
Mr. Moore, I'll speak to that, if that's fine. Mr. Rick, we applied for the last school construction grant after we did JFK because we wanted to apply it to whatever the plan was going to be for Elephant's Fork. And we were denied that grant, and the reason they came from the state was they wanted to be able to spread the grant recipients around since we had just received one. The second caveat with that was the grant, one of the unwritten rules was they wanted to use it for more rural areas. So it's going to be our goal to apply for the next round, hoping that that doesn't apply for the next round of school construction money that is actually a part of the governor's proposed budget.
I believe I may have used the wrong word. I'm not referencing the school construction. I'm talking about it's a school safety grant for our resource officers. I'm looking at it now. It's closed, of course, but it's on the DCJS website for years 2020, 26 school resource officer, school safety officer initiative grant that's provided by the DCJS. And I know funding is something that we're all cautious about. I was wondering, have we collaborated or separately applied for this grant to help us with the funding of the SROs? And if not, why?
So can I ask you a question? So you seem to be aware of this grant. Did you socialize that to your body, the school board?
I did, but there's conversation that was being held between both. So that's why I'm asking the question, to see where did we go with that.
So you did socialize that to the school board?
Yes.
That the grant was open before it closed?
I did.
Okay.
So my question still stands. Did we apply for the grant or did we not? And if not, why? Because funding is a major barrier, and we understand that. But there's a DCJS grant that was available, and I'm just trying to figure out, did we apply for it?
I'm sorry, I'm new here. I have another question. What committees do you sit on, Mr. Riddick?
I don't sit on the
You don't sit
committees
on any
that would
committees?
have this grant in mind.
No, I'm saying, what committees do you sit
Oh,
on? Do you sit on the
finance.
audit, not the audit, do you sit on the safety committee, school safety committee?
No.
Who sits on the school safety committee for school board?
So just to clarify, our citizen advisory committees are staffed by citizens, and then as appropriate, our staff.
Okay.
We don't, we appoint the people, but we don't participate in those because they are citizen advisory. So our standing committees, our finance committee, our legislative, and our policy review. And then currently, we have a temporary committee to review our citizen advisory committees to see what other structures and supports we need to put in place so that they can function appropriately. So we're not on any of the citizen advisory committees.
Got it, thank you. And when did you say the grant expired or closed?
The application closed on Tuesday, March 18th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
Okay, just moving forward, if anybody wants to speak, please raise your hand and be recognized, if you will. And obviously, if it's, whatever it is you're referring to is closed in March, it's kind of a moot point right now, but maybe it's something we need to look at and see how we can, if there are any grant opportunities available in the future.
The superintendent can answer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Riddick, to answer your question, and thank you, Dr. Brown and Ms. Forsman, for letting me know. We did inquire and started the process, but then we were informed that we would not receive the grant because the grant is mainly for school divisions that need the money in order to be able to sustain their current SROs. I think the challenge that, according to Mr. Moore and Chief Bowie, is not really about the money from the city. It's actually about the total number of officers that were available. But the strict requirement for the grant was for school divisions to continue, that needed that money to sustain their current SRO allotment.
My rationale for asking the question, we have over $8 million in potential unfunded or unassigned requests. So I'm looking at ways that we can work together to save money. We saw what positive fruit can come from it when we do so with the JFK grant, and this was an opportunity, and I just wanted to follow up to see if we work together, because that was something I did state at a public meeting to the general public, and I'm aware that both bodies normally watch the meeting, so it was something that was readily available as well, and especially with DCJS, they do have a grant distro list, and I believe that local law enforcement receive those grant notifications, as well as sometimes school safety personnel. So it wasn't to jab at any institution, it's just see how, if we're working together to fund what we need. Let me see, the next question I had. That's all the questions I have at this time along this topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Fields?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. I had a couple that I just wanted to follow up with. So you said most or many of the 46 new positions that you all are budgeting for are public safety. Do you have like a estimate of about how many of those would be police or sheriff department positions?
So we funded, we're proposing, I believe it's 9 positions in the police department, to include the 4 school resource officers. The sheriff's department is 2 positions, 2 sheriff's deputy 2s. And then in the fire department, 10 new firefighters, a captain, and 9 firefighters to staff a new medic unit at the new replacement facility at Station 4.
Charles,
Okay.
we also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Charles, we also had a detective, we had a call taker and a communicator, or a emergency 911.
Yeah, two in emergency communications in addition to the 9 in the police department, which would include the detective as well.
Okay. I guess this question is for Dr. Gordon. Now that they are absorbing or just keeping the SRO money with their budget instead of passing it back and forth, do we have to amend our budget to account for extra duty officers for our athletic events and our school board meetings?
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'm glad that question actually came up, because that is the additional expense that we will look for from some of the additional funds that the city manager had just discussed. So if he's saying that there's a difference of maybe a couple of $100,000, I know at least 100,000 of that is going to be necessary to cover all of our high school events, school board meetings, and Dr. Brown's team and Dr. Bird's team have also discussed we now need SROs at our middle school events for athletics and things too, because those crowds have also gotten a lot larger. So a large portion, if not all of that, would need to be used to cover anything that meets the requirement of having a police officer there once you go over a certain threshold for crowd control.
So to summarize, is that your summary of respectfully requesting that they include some of that for us as they're looking at the extra that will be left over, since we're definitely not getting 11 SROs?
Yeah, I think it's going to be.
It's like a hint.
Right, it is a huge hint, I like it.
Okay.
I think it's definitely going to be about, if the 5.8 million, after we get kind of an estimate from Dr. Brown's team and speaking with Sergeant Key, Chief Bowie, and Mr. LaFave, once all of our schedules are finalized, I think we'll have a better idea. But if there is any overage from that 5.8 that actually was going to be allocated to SROs, then yes, this might be something that we may have to come back to City Council for, if, depending on the total number of events, if we need additional funds for safety and security.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I don't believe that we're taking money, part of that reduction was to reduce the funding for the athletic events. I think that was already being paid for out of the school's operating budget previously, unless I'm not correct, Chief. So the 5.8 is part of the $7 million in new money for the schools next year. The difference, the 1.2, would be the existing SROs plus the 4 new ones.
And also, if I may add again, as I said a few minutes ago, there's a differential to the positive of about 300,000 to 400,000. The 200,000 was the low estimate.
You're actually coming out better. I mean, it's a little disingenuous to say, where's the other money going? Because if we gave you 11 officers, how did you plan on paying for the other? If we were to supply you with the 11 SROs that are in that budget, how did you plan on compensating the additional folks that you're talking about? Unless the intent was to take it out of the extra money that you were going to get. So, I mean, you don't have to answer the question, but I'm just saying, there's going to be something there, because if we said, okay, we're going to give you 11 SROs, they're going to cost you another $862,000, which we're going to bill you for, then where does the money come from for the athletic events? So it's just a matter of how you look at it. So, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
I just have one more, I want to say, I guess, statement, which I know you, as city council, have a bigger pot that you're responsible for than just public education, and we as board members all honor and recognize that, so I don't want to minimize that. But it was a little bit startling to hear that like roughly $100 million is in your rainy day fund, and you have to keep it there to maintain your AAA bond rating, while we have like an unfunded roughly $7 million in our budget that would enhance the lives of our students and our families that are part of this community. So I just wanted to make that comment, that it was a little startling to realize like that we don't have a rainy day fund, as you know. Like, when we have money left over at the end of the year, we have to come back to you, tell you why it's still there, whether it was positions that weren't filled, buses that weren't built, whatever, and then basically ask, can we still use it, but use it here? So, it just caught my attention, so.
To my knowledge, and actually, that $7 million that you asked for, you're getting it all. Because you take the SRO money out of there for what you would have to pay the existing SROs, would have 600 some thousand, the 862 you planned on, 1.5 plus the extra money. As the manager mentioned, you're actually about $200,000 ahead at the end of the day.
Yeah, let me be clear. I didn't mean the 7 million we asked for. I meant the slide that Dr. Gordon and Wendy shared, the things we didn't bother to ask for. That was about 7.3 million, as well as the 7 million we did bother to ask for. So even though we're getting the roughly 7 million that we asked for, there's still
It sounds like
programs.
a lot of money, but the 20% unrestricted reserve, we worked really hard to get there. It's very important that we maintain that, so we can maintain our AAA bond rating, because without it, you're talking about millions of dollars in extra debt service, which is interest for nothing. The stabilization fund that we created for a reason, not just to have a pot in the rainbow. It's there in the event that we do have to contend with something that is not budgeted for, so we don't put ourselves in a position to have to raise taxes or ask our citizens to pay more the following year. The capital reserve fund is there to be spent on anything we need capital-wise, even as far as the schools are concerned. I mean, we have a pay-go, which is part of what we spend without borrowing money. We have a guideline, and of course, the schools are a big part of the CIP also. So this is money that's there for a purpose. I know it looks like a lot, but when you look at our entire budget, and we've got almost $1 billion, with the roads that we need, the schools that we need, the recreational facilities that everybody wants, and on and on and on and on, there's a reason for that. We did not increase our unrestricted reserve past the 20%, because I think we hit that about 4 years ago. We actually, if you talk to our financial advisors, they'll tell you to make it 30%, make it 35%, the more the merrier, because it looks better. But in our opinion, the 20% is what is needed in the event that we do have something unforeseen, like a COVID. Now, we got through COVID exceptionally well, knock on wood, thanks to everybody's efforts and the staff, the manager, council, our citizens, we got through COVID. But if that had gone sideways, then that's what that money is there for. So we're not stockpiling it. If you look at the budget and see what money is being spent cash-wise on the budget, where that money went, I mean, you can look at it and say, okay, we don't want you to, don't finish the library, don't do the boat ramp, don't finish repairing this road or what have you. We want some more of that money, and that's part of the overall budget discussion. And our citizens need to bring that to us also. And I'm gonna bring that up once again. We have a public hearing on our budget. So if there's citizens out there that say, we don't want the money spent here, spend it over here, then that's something we can look at. But it has to come from somewhere. You have to give to get, It's got to not be allocated to one thing and allocated to something else. And I, for one, and I think everybody on council is willing to listen to that discussion. But that's the reason for it, and especially when you put it all together, it sounds like a lot of money. But I can't remember, how much does it cost to operate the city a day? 3 million, 30 million, Robert?
Yeah, the payroll is over $100 million a year. So if we were to have some kind of catastrophic tornado or storm, and we can't absorb that in our budget long-term, the FEMA dollars, the federal dollars, they come in maybe 2 to 3 years down the line. You don't get reimbursed right away for that.
So that's, I know Ron Williams had a number, I can't remember what it was, but I think the daily, just to operate our services are over $3 million a day. So kind of put it into perspective.
Yeah, I understand, and I understand there's a reason for it, and I already led with, understand you guys have a bigger pool of things you're responsible for. But we're also familiar with emergencies that you have to scrape up dollars for because we've been repairing potholes for years now. That were an infrastructure issue.
Sinkholes.
Sinkhole, sorry, far bigger than a pothole.
Got a couple extra
Thank you.
bucks for that.
So
Okay.
we've practiced the art of scraping things together. I think we're done on our end.
Yeah. Council, since this was our budget, I'm just going to ask if any council members have any additional comments concerning our budget. If so, raise your hand. Council Member Rector.
Thank you. As long as we're beating the SRO horse to death.
Except SRO stuff.
What I would like to point out, because Board Member Riddick was kind enough to point out that we do watch everybody else's meetings. What we're proposing with the adjustment of the funding for the SROs is not anything new. It's not a shell game. It's not anything that we're trying to hide some money in. As a matter of fact, I believe when Ms. Forsman was asked the question at y'all's own budget meeting, was this handled at the other 3 school divisions she worked at, I believe her answer was exactly as how we're proposing to do it. So I think that's important for the people and the public to understand. We're not trying to take money from the school board to not protect our children in our school. It's just simply an accounting thing so that money doesn't have to go to X and then turn around and come back to Y. And evidently that is how it is handled in other districts, and how we got to how we were doing it is probably more of a mystery than why we're going back to doing it the way it should be. And I just wanted to point that out.
All right, thank you. Any other council members have a comment? If not, moving right along, I'm not going to give you a chance to say anything. We're going to do the Elephant Fork Elementary School relocation, Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Madam Chairman, members. This is going to be a high-level discussion, very high-level discussion. Superintendent and I, and Mr. Napier and Kevin Hughes and probably a few folks I'm forgetting, we've been meeting on this a couple times. We have, of course, I think coming out of the last meeting was told or requested to focus on what are we going to do with Elephant Fork. Obviously, its current location is not the greatest location in our opinion. It's my understanding from talking to Dr. Gordon that it's the desire to have a location that's within the current Elephant Fork school. So we took that recommendation and we have been working together. We've worked to identify potential 4 sites. 3 are better than mostly, but we've grouped, come out, and the superintendent and his staff have come to the conclusion that we're looking in a general area of Pitch Kettle to 460. It's a large area, or actually almost over the Route 10 on one side. So not to go into a detail which sites these are, because it's not at this time that appropriate to do in an open forum. I just want to let you know, I guess my message here is that we are working together. We have heard you from last meeting. We have some thoughts. We hope this will work out in the next couple months, that we will be speaking to you in more detail. And so when it comes, Elephant Fork is coming up in the CIP. So we need to nail the site down to where it is. And Dr. Gordon, anything you want to add to that rambling?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up, Mr. Moore. The school board has made it a top priority with the total number of trailers that we have, learning cottages that we have at Elephant Fork Elementary School. One of the requests I got from Mr. Moore this morning, on the inside of your folders, you see the actual school board, Suffolk Public School attendances for each one of our schools. And Elephant Fork opened up at 656 this year, but the capacity of the school is actually 526. And so that is the reason why we have the mobile units in the back. So because we had already had discussions previously with the board when we were looking at some elementary rezoning that we ended up having to pivot away from, that was the reason why I alerted Mr. Moore and the team that came out from the city that we must keep it within the current Elephant Fork zone. And we believe that once the site is finalized and design work continues, that we will be able to meet the timeline that both the board and the city have put forward. As this was one of the schools that became a priority, especially after we took your legislators to school day. I know Mr. Bennett and several other members were there, and that's part of the reason why the school board had moved this up in the CIP. So I am working closely with the city manager on this, and we just want to be able to finalize things as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. And the reason we can't really get into detail is because, you know, we're going to be in a negotiating process at one point, and obviously we don't want whoever we're negotiating with to see which way we're leaning, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. But, I mean, from my standpoint, and I think everybody else on council, we know Elephants Fork is a priority, you know, better sooner than later, for sure. So we're moving ahead. I know the manager and the superintendent have had many conversations, and manager's spoken to me about a couple of locations, so hopefully we get something nailed down there pretty quick. We want to go ahead and move to our next.
Can I allow
Oh, yes, I'm
general
sorry, my bad.
questions
Yes.
from my end? Since I had this discussion on the education committee, but without meeting minutes, they're not privy to it. So if there's any general questions from board members about Elephants Fork, Mr. Riddick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is pretty much more so a request to both bodies. In site selection, please ensure that it's a site that is adjacent to a community or built in a community or that will be developed into a community. We do not want to repeat history of building an immaculate school that is not adjacent to a community, thus increasing our operational costs of busing more students to an instructional site. So it is my request, and it has happened, it is my request that in building this school that we build for anticipated growth as we are going according to our comprehensive plan, but we're also building in a realistic area that will have the need where we don't have to institute programs such as minority to majority programs or bus out-of-zone students there to make the building be at somewhat capacity, but you will have a footprint of capacity adjacent to the site itself. That's all I had to say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on.
All right, council members, did you have, I didn't ask, do you have any questions? If so, please raise your hand. All right, we'll move on to joint use of public school recreational facilities. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mayor, Madam Chairman, members of boards and council. We have, of course, an agreement for joint use facilities, but we also have a lot of recreational organizations without the city. And what we're going to be talking here is not facilities per se as a building, but the opportunity to work together on outside recreational opportunities that we can take advantage of some additional existing fields that are already there, and that we could work jointly on maintenance or some ideas there. You know, we have SYA, we have Bennett's Creek Little League, we have the football organizations throughout the city. We have a lot of different groups that are looking for places to practice, if not play. And so the idea here is to maybe work together, plant some ideas, some seeds today that we can move on and maybe develop some opportunities on some existing fields that are at the school locations, that parking's available and is not in a field off of Route 460 per se, you know, where it's safe and where it's some opportunities to work together. And with that, Mark Furlow, Director of Parks and Recreation, is going to walk you through some ideas. And this may not be all of them, but it is what I'm going to call is an appetizer to this concept. Mark.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of Suffolk School Board. My name is Mark Furlow. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Suffolk, and I will be talking to you this evening about amending the joint use agreement between the city and the schools to include some additional recreation facilities. So the Department of Parks and Recreation, as Mr. Moore stated, works pretty closely with about 8 nonprofit youth athletic associations in the city. And I'll add in Straighten Up and Fly Right. That's one the city manager didn't mention. There's a little nod to Board Member Riddick. So we primarily, we work with them by providing space for them to use for practices and games. And the department's policy is to do so at no charge to those athletic associations. We view the work that they do very favorably. They are able to provide services to the community at no charge or through volunteer labor, and these are services that otherwise would have to be provided by Department of Parks and Recreation paid staff. So we see this as a real benefit to the community. In conversations with the youth athletic associations in the city, we've determined that we have approximately a shortage of about 5 diamond or baseball, softball fields and about 3 rectangular or soccer/football fields for youth sports currently. Many, if not all, of the city's elementary and middle schools currently have athletic fields that go mostly unused after school's dismissal. So what are the barriers to these youth athletic associations using these fields? So in conversations with some of the athletic associations, they see cost as one of the biggest barriers. Currently, one of the athletic associations was paying about $7,000 per field per season to use one per field. The cost was able to get dropped down to about $700 per field per season when they assumed the maintenance. And those taking over maintenance has some additional costs that are involved to those associations too. So the other barrier that we see as to these organizations using these fields is the condition of the fields. Currently, most of these fields are not maintained at a level that is needed for recreational league play. So the city and the schools have a joint use agreement that was signed in 2008 and later amended in 2010. This agreement governs the shared use of gyms at Mac Bend, Northern Shores, Oakland, Booker T. Washington, and Creekside Elementary and Kings Fork Middle School. Additionally, the agreement governs the shared use of the fields at Forest Glen, JFK, and John Yates Middle School. The Department of Parks and Recreation currently provides school fields to youth athletic associations through that joint use agreement between the city and the schools. Adding the following fields to the agreement would allow the Parks and Recreation Department to make investments to the fields to improve the playability so that they are at a level that they could be used for recreational play. And it will also allow us to permit these fields to be used by these youth sports organizations. So the fields we're talking about are Kings Fork Middle School, Florence Bowser Elementary School, Nansemond Parkway Elementary, Creekside Elementary, and finally Southwestern Elementary. And these are just kind of the initial thoughts. There may be some additional schools or fields out there that we might want to include in there too. But our recommendation is for the city and Suffolk Public Schools to explore amending the joint use agreement to include those fields. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
If I may add to Mark's presentation, a couple of areas you haven't seen is really in the northern end of the city. We probably need to take a look up there as we talk about Cherry, or of course we've got construction getting ready to happen in the next year or so, or hopefully less than that, I guess, Superintendent, at Northern Shores. So that may be an area that we would probably not look real tight at Northern Shores with construction, but Cherry has quite a bit of area there too that You have a pretty dense population up there that probably needs, I know, there's been some football interest up in that area, Vice Mayor had put towards me. But I just want to add that. But really, it's the concept that we really want to talk about today. And then, of course, anything from this point as we can move forward would be a MOA or continuing on that lays out some requirements.
Okay, council, any questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Gordon, go ahead.
Okay, one that I didn't see in the recommendation here is tennis, because I've been approached by some of the tennis players about some of the tennis courts as well. So I would like to add that as a part of the group of the ball fields.
Certainly, we could definitely look at adding that to the agreement as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members? Vice Mayor Ward?
Yes, I don't, I don't know who to address this to, but I talked to Dr. Gordon that Northern Shores, I've been here 30 years, Northern Shores before Northern Shores got here. But when it was built, they had a little ballpark. They never used it. No, I mean, it stayed there. People had to go to Drivers, Churchland. That park, it would never was used. And what happened was, fast forward, I always ask my question, why nobody never used it? I know who to go to. And I seen football there. Burris Grant, some college, they're in the military, but parents started a football team, maybe about 4 years ago. So I was very impressed, even took the mayor up there to introduce that. And my concern is there any possible way that you can put markers out there for them? They don't have lines or goals or nothing like that. Because you would help them with that. I don't know who to ask, who, city or you, but just the idea that the parents put the initiative to go and make sure the community have a football team. I think that any type of way we can help them a little like, during the process. And so I don't know who have to do that, but I would like to see it happen. I got to ask another question. Go ahead, you can answer that one.
I mean, I think it would be part of moving forward. The first thing we need to do is we need to as expeditiously as possible, unless there's an issue with it, we need to move forward on these joint use agreements. This has always been a spur in some part of my body. It's always been an issue with me. The taxpayers own this building, the taxpayers own the schools. The parents are always looking for activities for their kids to do. You know, what do they do in the summer? What do they do after school? So it needs to be a joint effort. I mean, if we get it, if we have the joint use agreement, Parks and Rec gets involved, then it's, just like Parks and Rec, we help Holland with theirs. We do what we can, but we need to help with the school system also so they can use these fields. Kings Fork Middle School, you get SYA busted at the seams. For us to turn around and tell somebody it's gonna cost them, and I don't know if it was SYA, but somebody told me the same thing, it was $7,000 or $8,000 to use a ball field. They have volunteers. The value of these volunteers is, like they say on TV, it's priceless. I mean, they are providing a service that would cost us millions and millions and millions of dollars. And these volunteers, they're willing to maintain the property. They're willing to cut the grass. They're willing to line the fields. But they have to have access to those facilities, and they have to be in a condition where they can use them, as was referred to, as Mark referred to. So, I know I usually go last, but, I mean, in my opinion, this is something we need to look into. We need to look into it now and hopefully have something done by the summer. I don't know. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, if I can clarify some things, where we're at right now is just the concept. Where the markers go, who put the markers down, whatever, that all comes in the agreement. That's what I call the nuts and bolts of putting a thing together. Right, what we want to know is there an opportunity to do this? Is there an opportunity, where is the opportunities at, which schools? And, but then we would work back through the agreement of what maintenance, who does what, who pays for what, which I would see a lot on the city side, as far as maintenance goes. So, but really, we do not own the property. The school board owns the property. And so that's where the joint effort needs to come. But to me, you know, I grew up jumping the fence at the school to play baseball all the time. So, and I don't think I turned out too bad. So, you know, I think there's opportunity. The jury's still out on that, but I think we have opportunities here.
But the burden doesn't need to be on the school system, you know. We need access and, I'm sure we'll find a way to make it work.
I want to ask another question.
Well, can I answer your first question?
Okay.
And there's a lot of clarity that needs to occur. So when we've had this discussion about joint use in the past, it's definitely, as Mr. Furlow said, about the facilities that we already have. But one of the things that needs to occur is people need to go out and see, we have so many of our fields that are being used. There are so many Little League associations, different teams. John Yates, for example, you cannot go by John Yates without seeing multiple organizations. There's actually like territorial wars at John Yates between different organizations. Kings Fork Middle School, for example, we actually have one of the Little League football teams that uses that all fall. And one of the things that we have done once we began to realize that there wasn't enough space, because the point that everybody's making is true. There's not enough space for all the different organizations to use. We have been able to provide choices. There has to be a rate that has to occur for that for the fields, but you also have the opportunity to maintain the field. That is what we've done that allows us to be able to provide different rates for organizations for that. But you also have windows. So when we're talking about an organization saying it is $7,000, yes, it's $7,000 because you're requesting 80 days. I mean, there's a lot that kind of goes into that, and it also has to be a part of the agreement on the hours, the time, while also making sure that you do not interfere with the school's priorities, especially because our board has made it very clear that they want to expand middle school sports, especially when we're talking about baseball and softball. So the conversations that we had, this actually started with us about 3 years ago. Mr. Riddick and I were working on building up the baseball, softball fields at our elementary schools. That's an area that we can have some growth on. But however, we do need to understand some of our organizations actually use the outfields at those elementary schools for football practice. And that's part of the agreements that we've worked with. Our lead person for that is Robin Booth. She actually has a schedule in every organization for all of our buildings, including gym use, field use for the entire year. And we also try to make sure that people don't overlap so that we don't get into that territorial part. So if there is going to be any expansion on this between the city council and the school board, this will have to be a phase-in process after we've had a chance to audit overall field availability. All the schools that we have listed up here, not all of those schools have field availability. Kings Fork Middle School, when you go by there in the fall, you will see 2 teams using that field. We have school organizations that use Turlington Woods. I mean, these are things that are occurring because I think we're all in agreement that there needs to be something that has to be done. But we have to be able to show everyone the total amount of use that we're getting. And I do know that some of the elementary schools that Mr. Furlow has up here, there is some possibility there. There is some possibility at Southwestern. There's a little bit of possibility at Creekside. But if we are going to expand these middle school sports, that's really going to take some of the middle schools out because they have to be able to have the ability to practice as well. So just wanted to add that. Vice Mayor Ward, your thing about the boundaries and barriers, we got to make sure that everybody goes through the proper process because some of those things were happening. You know, people were turning on their headlights to be able to use those fields because they were out there, you know, past dark. So there was going to be an awareness on the organization's part. There was going to be an awareness on the school's part because there is liability. I know these guys think that they are making it to the NFL, but they also are old. And so we don't want them to get hurt, you know, at the same time. So that's just some of the things that we can definitely work through because that is a great organization.
Well, and that's why it's so important for information. That's why we're here to try to find out, you know, things ain't the same and so forth. And I want to ask this question. I might be not trying to disrespect nobody, stepping on nobody's toes. Why don't we have an indoor pool in schools? I mean, y'all know I'm in Brooklyn. Y'all, every school have a swimming team. Things, I don't know if we got a swimming team, and so do we have a swimming team in the high school?
Each high school.
We have swimming, okay. All
Each
three.
high
I
school
didn't
has
even know that, okay. What I'm trying to say, why we don't have no pool for them?
That is a great question. So remember, our last high school was built and opened up in 2005 with Kings Fork. And as soon as you are going to add a pool to a school, you know, you're in the mid to 8 figures to do that. And as you know, and I'm sure our school community knows, you know, we've been renting out the Ys, multiple Ys, in order to have swim practice. We've had several discussions about if we're going to put a pool into any of our future schools being built. So we would love to have a pool, but that is going to really, you know, jump the price up. And if you guys are willing to support that, hey.
Well, the fact is, and you know, you hear old traditions. I'm tired of hearing the old traditions, okay? If you want to go back 50 years, go back 50 years. I'm talking about now. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want to hear about old traditions, why they didn't do it. We built 2 or 3 high schools, and we still don't have a pool. I mean, when you gonna wait? I'm gonna be quiet now, thank you.
Mayor?
Yep. Councilmember Johnson.
Just quickly, John, I think we're missing the point here a little bit, because what this is about a group of people back here, Parks and Rec Department, that is more than willing to work with the schools. What we would like to do, especially in the rural areas of the city, because I live in one of those areas where we don't have much. And in Holland, we got nothing. We've got a beautiful school there, no parking. We got to fix the parking as we fix the sports fields. But the point being, we need to have a group set up, somehow the Parks and Rec people work with the schools. And when we build a school, if we're going to build a new school for the one we're going to build a new school for, can't talk. Let's include that in the plan. I mean, so that we all are connected, and then we will be responsible for part of the expense, of course. And then the schools can take advantage of that, and the community can take advantage. My thing's about the community. You got Forest Glen, we got a dang tennis court there, and we don't even use it because we don't maintain it. But the point being, we can do better as a community. And we've been saying this thing ever since I've been on council, and we haven't done it. It's time to do it. That's my point.
I want to say, since Councilman brought that up, about Holland, they're talking about multicultural center, not just that. There's so many things. You got 19 acres, I think about so many acres. This land, so you have a building, have a community that we can increase or make a better recreation. I think it's time to do this here. You know what I'm talking about? You know, like I said, I go by where Kings Fork at, and you see all these other teams out there. You know, we can get, that's money coming in. We can have events, we can have tournaments. I mean, why we don't try, you know, to increase the land we have? People go all over. And I used to play sports. I didn't care where it was at. South Carolina in the woods, we wouldn't play because of the tournament. you know, even help the hotels out. I'm just saying, why are we not thinking like that? You know, you ought to increase 58, widen for traffic. I mean, you know, they're trying to put something together out there. I think that's something that we have to look into.
I think it's something moving forward. We would definitely look into it.
But we're always moving forward, and it ain't go nowhere. We like I said, we talked about 20 years. We still talking about the same thing.
Amen.
I promise.
Amen.
I'm sorry, man.
Okay, anybody else? Does anyone have any, council member?
We were talking about space and field. John F. Kennedy Park. We have a lot of acres there. Quite a few fields in there that's not being utilized. And that's a lot of space there.
So what we did is for this specific exercise is we were looking at organizations that had deficiencies in field spaces, and we looked at schools in that proximity. So currently the youth sports, and I'll say the youth sports organizations that we work with, the 8 that we work with, they didn't identify, the ones in the specific area of, I think you were talking about Lake Kennedy Park? the ones in that specific area didn't identify a need for additional spaces at this time. So that's why that wasn't part of this exercise. So the ones that really were hurting for spaces were primarily in the Bennett's Creek area, Holland area, and then like the Kings Fork area.
Well, I think some of that was because of the field that they were using at John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
And with that being taken up, and I don't know.
What?
All of those spaces there.
Yeah, and they are you're talking Intercity Athletics is the organization that was using Kennedy, and we've relocated them to Lake Kennedy Park for their practices, and they're supposed to be using Forest Glen for their games. So. Yeah, well, we're hoping once JFK's built that we're going to have some really nice facilities there for them to move back into. So. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we can look at in the future. But I think right now that we're making that investment at JFK, and that they're going to have some really nice facilities there. So, I will say too, I'd like to add that the joint use. Dr. Gordon, you mentioned that you've got some athletics, middle school athletics. So that the joint use agreement does address that, and I think that this agreement has worked pretty well. And it does give the schools priority as long as the schools exercise. If they notify us by sometime in the summer that they intend to use the fields or spaces for their own athletic programs, they get priority over those fields or gyms or whatever the case may be. So and if there are athletics, they're not going to be practicing all night. There's still may be some opportunities to allow some other teams to come in after those middle school teams are done practicing. And we just want to help be part of that solution to help maybe improve those fields and make them playable for those organizations and make them usable.
Council members, any other questions or comments? Chair Howell?
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in here real quick since you did that first. I mean, I'm all for this discussion. My big questions are, like, for example, Creekside is an absolute mess. That's why nobody uses it, not because it's not needed.
I agree.
Who's going to fix it?
We will.
And so what are the how's liability handled? If there's an injury on property we own, then
So
how do you guys account for that?
The agreement speaks to that. That's addressed in the agreement, and what we're required for any organization that we permit the field use out to, they're required to have an insurance policy and name the schools as additionally insured as well as the city. So the school is protected. We make sure that schools are protected in this agreement. And that was one of the things that I talked about, is that we want to make improvements. We want to make investments in those fields to make them playable. We know, I mean, Creekside is probably, you're right, Creekside is probably the worst of the fields for elementary schools. But we think we can make some improvements and make it playable and ready for recreational league play.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear where this money's going to come from to make them playable, and then also how we're protected in these agreements.
Yep.
I've got to say, like, I don't support, like, expanding use of our middle schools because we're growing that program intentionally. And, I mean, we've already rolled out John Yates. Like, there's somebody on almost all areas of the field at John Yates all year, unless there's snow in January. They're out there. And Kings Fork, that program is growing. The baseball coach out there is working hard to grow his program outside of our school program, like his intramural. I mean, I don't know what's going on at Forest Glen, because you spoke to Holland area being needing something. And all these schools that are listed in the joint agreement, only one of those would alleviate the Holland area issue. But my 2 cents is I'm hesitant I know schools will get priority, but I don't want to have that be a point of angst between us as our middle school programs grow, because we've got middle school sports, so just about everything except for baseball, softball, swimming. I mean, we've got soccer, we've got all of it just about, and And their season is like the opposite of our varsity season for the high school because of how we have to already carefully schedule our field use. So my vantage point is I'm open to this discussion for the elementary schools as long as we're not expected to foot the bill and we're protected in our opening up our facility to use by the general community.
So-
Anybody else on the board? Mr. Riddick.
Madam Chair, I would like to caution the board before we jump in haste. It's a noble request, but we need to pump brakes. We need to dissect thoroughly what is being asked of us and assess our facility conditions. If you go to Creekside, because that's the example that was used, that's the example I'm going to use, where the baseball diamond is, there's an additional parking lot that was not originally a part of the footprint design. But because of the influx of cars, we had to seize some of that land. So is it actually accessible for what it is designed to do, although the baseball cage is there? Is it accessible with the risk of hitting someone's car because the outfield only have 2 or 3 directions you can go? Either you can hit the road or you can hit the parking lot. So I think we need to pump brakes. I think there needs to be some fruitful discussion about how we utilize our physical property. For an example, we don't want our public land to become a facade for private use. What I mean by that, and I'm going to say it in what it is, we don't want one organization monopolizing year-round usage. There are some memorandum of understandings that exist that has been put in place since 1985 or 87, I'm getting older so I'm forgetting, that prohibits usage at some of these joint use sites. When you go to some of these joint use sites, and if you go back to some of our school board meetings, you'll actually hear some people come up and talk about it. It is ran pretty much as a business with youth sports. Suffolk Public Schools have made its facilities available. We have hosted AYF regional tournaments. We have hosted Pop Warner regional tournaments, especially on that immaculate turf field at Lakeland High School. We have done these things in times past, and the process they go through, and I went through it myself so I can speak light to it, is you just go get the facility usage request form, fill it out, principal sign it, someone in Mr. Napier's office sign it, then it makes it up to the superintendent. If you want to request for a fee waiver, you just ask, hey, can we absorb this cost? And usually what that parameter looks like is how many people in your program are Suffolk Public School students. That's where it kind of gets murky at. Because in looking at the footprint that we want to grow in, a lot of the programs are not just exclusively Suffolk. And I don't have a quarrel against that because sports is changing. The basic scheme of neighborhood ball is extinct. Everybody wants to have the best, so this regional concept is the new wave, and I like it. But I think we need to slow down and look and see exactly where we are at. What does a feasible agreement looks like? What is it exactly Parks and Rec and the City of Suffolk is asking us for, and what is our vision? And the reason why I'm saying that, because in 2023, Dr. Gordon and myself, along with, at that time, Coach Fortune, we were in some heavy negotiating with some major players to come in and rehab all of our baseball diamonds at no expense to Suffolk Public Schools, nor to the City of Suffolk. So we had a plan in place to create feeder systems that was equitable across the board, because the best organization to provide service for this large city would be the public school system. There are resources available to help us create those feeder programs at little to no additional cost to our city. I'm just asking us, before we jump hoops and try to rush something through, let's do what I previously mentioned to make sure we're making strategic steps and not emotional steps. Lastly, there was also, well, not lastly, Vice Mayor, I agree with you. and I talk junk about not having a pool at the immaculate John Fitzgerald Kennedy Middle School. I think if we serious about it, we're still doing work on it. I think it would be easier just to add a pool to that building while we're already in construction. We know we got $100 million that we could possibly pull from. I'm gonna leave that there. But I think we can make it happen. Why? Because when we rent the YMCA or other venues, we're paying easily $20,000 a year per school, let alone you open up the opportunity to have regional competitions. Be it further brought to our recollection that when East Suffolk Recreation Center was designed, it was designed to encompass a full-size Olympic swimming pool. But that was something that a governing body chose to remove, and I understand why, because the building we have now is not the building that was designed. What we have now was actually another nonprofit building, Boys and Girls Club. I've been doing this since I was 11, so it's all coming to help me now. So if we're going to move forward, let's make strategic steps. For an example, there's an athletic sportsplex that I've heard City Council talk about being developed with the old Army site, with the old driver's site or something of that sort. It's in Northern End. Let's grow that. Let's build it where we can host those tournaments. The Northern End is where baseball is happening. Let's just be honest. You have two leagues that are busting at the seams there. If we already got it in the plan, how can we move that up? But to just move forward and launch and get into an MOU off of one day's conversation without the board actually having some real discussion of what is our long-term strategic plan to grow our athletic programs. I think it's kind of cart before the horse. There are several things that is already in place. We have capacity, and I do agree with Vice Mayor Ward. I think he's spot on when he said when we're building these schools, we need to have all of this stuff in planning then. Because all elementary schools were designed with a baseball/soccer field. So it's feasible. And I concur. As you know, we use the fields, and we use McBean, and we use Turlington Woods, because the growth, Peanut Park can't hold us. But we also have to be strategic. I think what we should come up with is a strategic plan between Parks and Rec and Suffolk Public Schools as to how we can really make this great. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay. But just,
Mr. Mayor, can I say something real quick?
do it. Okay, go ahead.
And I promise you, I'm not going to be long. One of the things that I'm pulling from this discussion is I think that we're all in agreement that we have, like a lot of things in our city, we have a lot more needs than we have resources with which to deal with them. And I'm looking up at this last screen that Mr. Furlow presented to us, and I'm looking at the first word. It's explore. I don't think we're here tonight to make any concrete decisions about exactly which schools, what facilities, what activities we're going to get included in this agreement. I think we're just making the recommendation that we take a look at what we've got. We all recognize that we have a need. There's a potential avenue to satisfy that need through the facilities that are already in place, but the when, where, why, and how much obviously is a discussion that is going to be down the road. So, I mean, with that, I'll be quiet.
And Councilman Rector's point, that's exactly right. I mean, we can't finish what we don't start. We need to start the conversation now to see what works, to make sure it's not a burden on the school system, to make sure that we touch all the bases, that Parks and Rec's prepared to do this, to enumerate who's going to have what responsibilities and how we can do it, and then start implementing some type of program. The bottom line is the school system has resources and we have resources. We need to put our little heads together and figure out how we can use our resources with your resources to provide a service to the citizens of Suffolk, because they've paid for those schools, and they've paid for the fields, and they've paid for the buildings, and they pay for us to fund Parks and Rec. So it's our responsibility You know, of course, most of it usually falls on our shoulders, but we need the cooperation of the schools, just like the manager said. Once we give you the key, you own the schools. So we have to ask permission to be able to use it for any purpose. So I'm confident that once we get started, we can make it happen. There's absolutely no doubt the amount of effort that those volunteers put in. I don't know if you ever go to one of these ball fields. We couldn't afford to pay to do that. We do have the driver transmitter station. We are working on that. There isn't $1 million and some change in the CIP, I believe, this year to start working on it. But to get to where we need to be there, I mean, that's infrastructure, it's roads, it's lights, those facilities are there at our schools, which the taxpayers paid for. We need to find a way to use those resources without adding a burden to the school system. We don't expect you to, I don't expect you to pick up a tab for anything. We just need permission to use the fields. And then you need to protect it that, to Mr. Furlow's point, that the schools' activities always take preference and priority over anything else that's going to be done. So that's not going to be an issue. Liability is not going to be an issue. And then we have to make sure that there's an application process that we have a policy and a process in place that vets the organizations. We know who's going to be responsible for what. But we just have to get started to get anywhere, that's all. Nothing's going to happen today. Go ahead.
Okay, any other board members with comments, questions, input? Dr. Brittingham?
So I'm going to echo a little bit of what my counterpart on council said for my borough in Holland. We definitely need more facilities and places for community athletics. I certainly want a well-balanced approach here. I want the school system to always have priority to the fields, specifically for middle and high school, because that seems to be where we have most of our sports programs, although I'm excited at the idea that we may offer sports programs on the elementary level as well. But if we have the ability to have Parks and Recs come out and work on that area, and volunteer organizations that are willing to come in and do the work to prepare those grounds to make them usable, I am definitely very amenable to that idea. Again, we want to protect the school and the students first and being able to utilize those. But if there's a time frame that allows other organizations to come in that will partner with the school division to keep that property in working condition for sports events, I think it's a win-win situation for the city and for the school division. So I'm excited about this conversation. I appreciate everyone who has brought thoughts and ideas to the conversation. I appreciate Parks and Recs being here and bringing this to our attention as a possibility. And I hope moving forward that this is possible. I think one of the things that our kids need is the ability to have outside activities. I don't think that we have had enough of that. I can tell you going into COVID and being shut up in houses for long periods of time is not good for children. And, if we want to positively impact student achievement, research has shown us that, extracurricular activities are a good way to do that. Sports is a wonderful way to engage, the physical body and the mind. Fine arts is also a great way to do that as well. And if we have an opportunity to partner with the community and with the city of Suffolk to make that a possibility, I think we should. Thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Board Member Jenkins?
Thank you. I just want to piggyback with Mike, Councilman, about Lake Kennedy Playground. If you all have never been there, it is huge. Lake Kennedy Playground is huge, and it has a few picnic tables and just a few things for little kids to play on. But it's big enough for a baseball field and a football field for them to practice on. So I'm just encouraging you to look into that. I know it's not in Northern Suffolk, but it's there. That land has been there forever. And so I would hope that community as well could have something there where it could bring something new and something different to that neighborhood. And a lot of people, I know your district, our district, and anybody would be willing to go because it's always, that section is always left out. But again, that belongs to the city, and there's a lot of land there in Lake Kennedy Playground that is already yours and could be utilized. So teams or whatever could go there, basketball, baseball, football, all of that could be right there in that vicinity. When I went to John F. Kennedy, after band practice, cheerleader practice, we used to walk through back of John F. Kennedy and walk to that field to get to where we stayed. So again, if you have not taken a trip to see how big that part of that land is, I think that would be a great use.
Yeah, I agree, Board Member Jenkins. I think it's a great park, and we just put in a brand-new playground a few years ago, and it's a beautiful playground. One of the things with Lake Kennedy Park, though, we do consider that a neighborhood playground, and there is limited parking, so we want to be careful about some of the more intensive uses. We don't want to negatively impact the neighborhood with a lot of cars and traffic that we can avoid. But I will say, I think that one other thing I want to say is what we're proposing to do here, I think it has a lot of benefits for schools too. If you look at JFK, which is currently in the joint use agreement, before you started construction on the new school, I think that those were probably the best fields that you had at any of the middle schools in your school system. And that was because of that partnership that we had. We were allowed to come in and make improvements there, and you had some really nice facilities there. And I think you have the potential to do that at some of the other middle schools. I understand that that could potentially benefit some of these new athletic or baseball leagues or baseball teams that you're starting at the middle school program. So for what that's worth.
Anyone else on the board? I think we're done.
Okay, council, any last questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to new residential development, Mr. Manager.
At this time, I'll call Kevin Wine, Director of Planning, to the microphone. He'll go over some of the recent developments we have, some of the potential growth as relates to student population that may be coming out of that. I think what we need to remember as we go through this exercise that not all the potential growth happens on day one of students. Development could take 5 to 10 years of a period of time to fully develop, or it could be a little bit shorter in some cases. But when we talk about numbers, let's keep that time period in mind of how things may occur. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, and Chair, Vice Chair, members of the school board. The manager hit a really important point there at the top. I always look to communities like Hill Point and Harborview that to this day are still building out, but they were approved back in the mid-'80s. So sometimes it can take 30 years to build out a development. But what I'm going to touch on today, really wanted to help visualize where the development is occurring, particularly as it relates to location of schools and primarily the elementary school districts, but we'll also walk through what those numbers look like, not from a forecast perspective, but utilizing the city's Unified Development Ordinance as it relates to how we calculate impacts to the school systems when we're looking at adequate public facilities associated with our rezoning requests. So today I'm going to share with you some of the key developments that we have located throughout the city. They're in various stages of development, whether recently rezoned or in some cases committed or almost finished. But we have development throughout both sections, the north section and the central section of the city. And here's the map of the northern end. You can see that the elementary school districts are overlaid under this map. And The single-family developments are shown in yellow, while the multifamily developments are shown in blue. Some of the larger ones in the northern area of the city include River Club, which is a 377-unit single-family development. 306 of those units are remaining. A recently committed project that did not require rezoning. It's a by right development. It's called Nelms Ridge off of Bennett's Pasture Road. That's 116 units. Bennett's Creek Quarter, this is a good example of a project that was approved at this point 7 years ago. It received rezoning approval. 417 units total. Of those units, 115 are remaining undeveloped at this point, but the developer is close to finishing those out. Another new development that was rezoned many years ago at this point is off of Sleepy Hole Road, Nansman River Estates. This is phase 9, and that will include 74 single-family units. So here is the map of the central area of the city, also overlaid on top of the elementary school zones. You can see there's a tremendous amount of development that we have going on in this area of the city, really having to do with the development we've seen along the Route 10 corridor, as well as 58 and 460. But some of the bigger developments that we have here, I'll go back to rezoning that occurred back in 2015 for a project that is not yet committed, and I should explain what committed means real quick. When we are calculating our pipeline information to see what impacts it may or may not have on the school system, we have pipeline development and then we have committed development. Committed development are those developments that have received plan approval. So they, at this point, whether that's a preliminary plat or a residential site plan, they've received those approvals, so they are going to happen at this point. Not all rezonings are feasible and do not result in committed development all the time. White Marsh Estates is a good example of that. That's down there in off of White Marsh, and would go to Booker T. Washington. But that was a rezoning that took place in 2015. At this point, that development is not committed. There's been no engineering plan submitted on behalf of the developer for that. Meanwhile, the development just north of that, Glenwood, was rezoned about a year ago and became developed or became committed very recently over the last month. And that's 170 largely single-family units, some towns there as well. Godwin Park, that's a development that was approved the 2019-2020 timeframe. Large amount of those, 260 of the overall 700 units that make up that development are going to be one-bedroom or age-restricted in some capacity. There is a multifamily development taking place in Hill Point that should be under construction soon. The Hill Point Trace development, that's a 76-unit multifamily development that is an actual affordable project that we're quite pleased to be able to welcome to the city. Some other larger developments in your central area include the Linwood Millstone development. Once again, this is a rezoning that dates back to 2009, but that did recently become committed. That's 207 single-family detached units combined between those two properties. Edgewater along Turlington Road there. 83 of the 119 units that are approved there remain undeveloped at this point. And then the Lake Kilby development off of Lake Kilby, 204 single-family units. A larger development that is not yet committed in our system is the Pitch Kettle Landing rezoning. This includes 335 townhomes that you can find along right there at the bypass and Pitch Kettle Road. So, with that being said, this is our information as it relates to calculations and potential impacts on the school system. This is not a forecast by any stretch of the imagination. It's not that complex, but this is the calculation that we utilize to analyze impacts and pipeline enrollment within the school system. Some of these with asterisks next to them have committed, have pipeline development, but it's not showing committed yet, so that's why they are zeroed out. But for Booker T, that includes the Glenwood development, recently committed, so that should actually be 31 students, but doesn't, for instance, include the White Marsh Estates development that was approved back in 2015, because that's not yet committed. We have Creekside at 30 students in the committed pipeline, Elephant's Fork at 33, Florence Bowser 83, Hill Point 99, Kilby Shores 32, Mac Bend 39, Nansman Parkway 7, Northern Shores 38, Oakland 24, and Southwestern right now 0. Moving along to the high school, or the middle schools, excuse me, 19 at Colonel Fred Cherry, Forest Glen 26, JFK 23, Yates 67, and Kings Fork 73. And lastly, our high schools, 100 that we have committed going to Kings Fork, Lakeland 41, and Nansman River 99. And once again, this is not a forecasting model. This is the model that we utilize to anticipate potential impacts as we evaluate adequate public facilities and their availability for potential development within the community. So with that being said, that concludes my presentation on our pipeline data and where some of the key developments are going in the city as it relates to placement of schools, and I can stand by for any potential questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wine. Council, any questions? Hearing none, not before we move to the school side, I just want to thank you. This was very, very, very well presented. This is something that I think we were kind of looking for at our last joint meeting that we really didn't have. But you got all the information in there. The only question is on the potential new students. You know, were those committed developments and those numbers based on the UDO projections?
Yeah, that's based upon the UDO projections.
Okay.
Not any scientific formula, for instance, that we utilized in the 2021 facilities report done for the schools. So this is X number of units will generate X number of students depending on.
Well, I still think it's something we need to delve into if we, you know, need to pay for another study or what have you to see. I don't think the old thought process works where a 4-bedroom house, but you're going to generate 2.5 kids, because it's not working. There's more that has to be involved in the formula, because obviously we're not generating the student population at the same rate that we're generating housing, and we haven't for the last decade. So there's not anything good or bad about it, but I think from a planning perspective, we just need to get a better grip on exactly where students are going to be generated, which is different than just looking at what type of housing is. It's got to be what type of housing, where that housing is, and any other demographics or anything that we have to look at. And I think we could probably do that. And I appreciate the, Dr. Gordon, I don't know if you had putting this together. This is very good. We got a list on the actual students that are attending each school. And that's awesome. That's another way to kind of put it into perspective. When we look at what's here and then you look at where all the development's been, how many students were actually generated or have been with those new developments in that area. So with this, sorry, Councilmember Wright, did you want to
I do have a quick question. So you just brought this to my attention about attendance, but do we have something showing what the capacity is left at those schools? Where is that?
We received that beginning of the fall.
Oh, so I'm asking, is this something that's here? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of answer that, so that capacity, you know, that's one of the big discussions we had, Councilwoman Wright, where the capacity of the school, building capacity is always going to be different than the actual functional use. And that's going to change every year. So that's what kind of why I gave that example of, you see building capacity of Elephants Fork of 526, but the actual enrollment of the building is 646 because of all the mobile units out back. So, you know, one of the conversations, we can do this maybe again in the next meeting, that we did from our side was really show that your different grade levels have different sets of rules. If it's going to be the K through 3 initiative, or the example that Ms. Howell was talking about earlier, where a special education classroom might be originally planned to hold 25 students, but realistically can only hold 10. And you may have 2 to 3 adults in there. So that's something that Dr. Bird's team and school leadership looks at every year, partnering with Dr. Branch's team, especially Dr. McNair, with special education. So we kind of have an idea of what our capacity is looking like every year by making sure that we don't go over our set pupil to teacher ratios. But one of the things that we've had to explain to our school community, as well as to council and anyone else, is at our elementary schools is so different because that's also preschool classrooms. And those preschool classrooms, you know, they take up a normal classroom size. So, in looking at this, I know that board members are going to have some questions with it, but I really appreciate that question.
Well, the reason why I asked, just so you know, is because it's important, so we see what the potential is for development. We see what the attendance is for development. But I think it would be important, I guess, at least at the next meeting, to also know what the capacity is, so that when we, as a governing body have to make decisions, we have that, kind of have that information in front of us. So I just feel like there's just a gap. We have the attendance, we have what the potential is, but what is the capacity at each school? Thank you.
Council, any other questions, comments? Madam Chair?
Okay, board members, I will let you go first. Anybody have any comments or questions? Board Member Slingloff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to vocalize something. I think my big concern right now is looking at the breakdown of potential new students for the high schools, and particularly where it's all coming from. I also know that City Council, I've urged you to think it through strongly. I know that on the 16th of this month, you're discussing the Harborview Station, which would add another 344 units that I'm assuming is going to feed into Nansemond River High School, which is over capacity already, and you're projecting another 99 students. I see all the development for the Kings Fork area that's going to be feeding in there as well. I don't know the solution, but my question is there a thought process at any point where we're considering another high school? And is there any location that we could even consider, or, you know, how would we remedy this? Because once you get to the 3 high schools, it's, you know, you can't, Lakeland's not an option for the Kings Fork, Nansemond River area, which is on the opposite side of the city. So I don't know the solution for it. I just know that it makes me nervous, particularly looking at the high schools and seeing these numbers. And then that another new new development that you all are considering on the 16th, that makes me very nervous too, and I'm sure it does Chair Howell.
Anyone else? Board Member Brittingham?
I echo what Board Member Slingloff has said. I'm just looking inside of the area for Elephants Fork and just wondering how in the world are they going to put any more students into that elementary school? Like, if all of these happen, I'm looking at the Pitch Kettle Landing one alone, 335 units, and just thinking, where would they put students? And then, of course, Kilby Shores, because Kilby Shores is landlocked and there's no real expansion for them. You know, I'm looking at all of those units thinking, you know, it won't be long before they are in the same situation as Elephants Fork. I mean, they're already there. I mean, they need to be moved, and we've had conversations about trying to do a joint campus with Forest Glen potentially, but I'm very concerned, looking at these numbers, that we're gonna set ourselves up for a really bad situation. Thank you.
Board Member Fields, Board Member Jenkins, either of you have any?
I have one question about Oak Terrace. Where is this actually located? Is this the one down by Oak Grove Baptist Church? Because it's a new development that's being built right there.
I missed the first part of that question.
What's the name
Oh,
of the new?
Oak Terrace. Oak Terrace is off of Portsmouth Boulevard. That would be assigned to Mac Ben. That's 120 multifamily units.
And that's the one that's by,
I think that's one right there on Prospect Road.
okay. So what is the name of the new neighborhood that's being built off of East Washington? And then, what is it?
Reed's Place.
Reed's Place.
Reed's Place.
Okay, so is that's not part of this? Because you've already calculated it, or?
That's part of the numbers that we presented. Not every single development is on the map.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair McGee?
I want to say to them while it's there, I think he explained some good information about the process and how long sometimes it get rezoning done before it's built. So a lot of these numbers, it's gonna be years out before you will ever see those numbers come into play. But, so I think you explained it very well. If everybody understood exactly what you were saying, it's not like it's gonna happen tomorrow, or next week, or a year from now. Some of it, 10 years might be out. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Correct.
Vice Chair McGee?
Thanks, Madam Chair. The only question I have, sir, you said Glenwood project, that was a plus 31 for Booker T?
Yes, plus 31.
Now, does the middle school or the high school capture that new development?
Those numbers do not, I believe I have those numbers. And once again, I apologize. Glenwood recently became committed, so that comes into our total. But Glenwood impacts JFK, bringing that number from 23 to 40. And Lakeland, in this case, would go from 41 to 63.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. In regard to, once you approve something for development, it could take 10 years for them to do that. Is there any possibility to reconsider that policy or that procedure so that when you approve a neighborhood or a residential development, they've got to act on it in 5 years so that we're not here in another decade doing this again because we approved it, but we couldn't possibly predict what's going to happen 10 or 20 years down the road, what our funding would be, what the school circumstances would look like, what the infrastructure is, and the perfect storm that has now fallen upon Suffolk where we've got expansion and roadwork on 17, and we've got projects on Mansfield Parkway, and it just created a bit of chaos because of the timing of things. Is it possible for you all to put something in place where you say, yes, you can develop here by this date?
We'll let the attorney.
No, unfortunately, we cannot because these are rezonings. So basically what we're doing is we're changing, let's say it's going from agriculture to a residential medium designation. We're rezoning the property. It sticks with the property forever. The person who gets it rezoned does not have to do anything with that rezoning. So there's no way under the law that we can put a limit on how long a rezoning lasts because we can't take it back. Once it's rezoned, it's rezoned.
Yeah.
But also to that point, to what the attorney just mentioned, yeah, if you're just rezoning something, it's hard to do. But we have last several developments, the one we just approved on Pitch Kettle Road, we had the staging of the build-out was part of what they proffered to do. So we did, in the course of discussion, So it was delayed to the point where it should align closer with the building of Elephant's Fork. They were limited to, they can't build it all out in a year or 2 years. It was 30 this year and 45 the year after that, or however it was that we developed it, but they agreed to a staging of the build-out to align with the school. The key is that we have something in the CIP that's, I think if you can do that, then it makes it possible. It's kind of like what you wanted, what you're talking about.
We
did the
can't
same
require
thing.
that either, though.
We can't require it.
That has to be volunteered by
Right,
the
but it has,
property owner.
right, we can't require it. But it was proffered because the developers, you know, when they came to me to talk to me about it for support, I said, I can't support it like it is. You have to stage this thing out. You're not gonna build it out and then overload that school right away. So it's possible to kind of get there, but to the attorney's point, we can't require it. As far as the high schools are concerned, about when did we do that study? 5, 6 years ago, we had our big facility study, and one of the recommendations was put an addition on Nansemond River for 300 or 400 kids. And I believe my exact words were, I wish I could write a check for that right now. If you put that addition on Nansemond River, but that suggestion has not been a top priority of the school board. It's still like number 7, 8, I don't know, maybe it's moved up to 7 on the list. So you determine, the school board determines their request when they bring it to us, what they would like to have done in what order. The addition on Nansemond River didn't take priority over a lot of other things. But if that 300 or 400 student addition was done on Nansemond River, and you've got the wherewithal to redistrict a couple hundred kids off the western side of Kings Fork, you have just taken care of your high school capacity problem for about a decade before you have to worry about another high school. Now, I think that addition was about $14 million back then. I might be wrong, I don't know. But that's how you, in my feeble opinion, that's how you fix the high schools, for a reasonable amount of money. But it has to be a priority on your side. I mean, I still say if I could write the check for it, I would, because you're exactly right. That's the only way you can fix the high school problem. You can't redistrict kids to go past Nansemond River to someplace else, to Kings Fork, which is almost already capacity anyhow, to get all the way out to Lakeland. So Lakeland's where the capacity is. So you need the addition on Nansemond River, then chop a little bit off the west side of Kings Fork to go to Lakeland, it's done. I mean, it sounds easy, but, we gotta get there, and it's gotta be the priority, and we've built other things before that. You know, could have done, I'm not doing the what-ifs, go ahead.
Mayor, where'd Kevin go? He ran away from me.
Kevin left.
I looked down at my shoes, he was gone. Kevin, if I'm correct, we have constructed over probably 6,600 units in the last 10 years, 12 years.
That's accurate. In fact, over the last 3 years, we've approved nearly 2,000 new residential units. So on average, about 650 new COs a year on new residential.
Just to point out, since 2018, the school population has grown 333 students total. In the last 2 years, if you're talking about the 2,000, it's grown 45 students. So when we talk about these numbers, we've got to understand the time frame of this. It doesn't happen on day one, and we're not, in 2018, we had 14,267 students. Today, we have 14,600. And really, there was a big downturn in your population for the pandemic, which then recovered 2 years later coming out. But since that time, it's been a 65 students. So when we talk about we're projecting on the UDO's numbers, remember that's conservative, and it looks big when you just say on day one we're going to have this many students. But I'm looking at the numbers provided to us today from y'all, that what has happened over this time period. So I just wanted to try to balance this out.
May I finish my comment?
Yeah.
If I may. I understand all of what you're saying, and speaking to our CIP, it was not something anybody flippantly decided. We have little children in buildings that are deteriorating, growing mold, flooding, in learning cottages, whatever you want to call them to make yourself feel better. And they took priority over in addition to Nansemond River because we were between a rock and a hard place, and we have 3 crisis situations and hopeful funding for one. So nobody pushed Nansemond River down the pike because it wasn't a priority. We had 3 priorities and enough money for one. And we put the little children at Elephant's Fork in the deteriorating building with minimal bathrooms that probably don't meet safety codes at this point, and the learning cottages above Nansemond River. And if I had to, I'll have to do it again in the fall, and that will still be my emphasis, because those children are still in that crumbling building. And there's gotta be a middle ground here, so we can't put a timeline on it. And what Board Member Slingloff was alluding to, I'll just ask directly, can you learn to say the word no? Until you pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I see you have 929 kids at Florence Bowser. We're thinking about approving enough units that sometime in the next decade will produce 83 students. What's your capacity? And then you'll find out our capacity is 71 students away from where we are today. And if Florence Bowser's not on the CIP for at least 10 years, and you know that within 10 years, it's likely you're gonna throw 83 students in there, you're putting us in a position we have no control over. But we're responsible for fiscally responding to it. That's why I'm frustrated. Not because you don't have great presentations and you're giving us the information that you think we need, but because I think you need to pump the brakes on the housing development until we recover from this crisis where we're choosing between 2 bad options, either ignoring the crisis at Nansemond River or ignoring the crisis at Elephant's Fork. Nansemond River is already over capacity, and feeding 99 students in there in the next decade blows my mind that you all think that's worth it, the revenue that neighborhood would bring in, the builder, however it works on your end, to create a situation for our students, our greatest treasure, our greatest asset, who hopefully won't flee this community because of the growth. You're putting whatever the revenue comes from these development, whatever drives your decision to say yes and yes and yes and yes and yes. That over the conditions that our kids live in 9 hours a day, and our teachers who are on rolling carts because we don't have enough classrooms for our teachers, so they're shifting between bells, doing their planning blocks in a shady, dim stairwell. That's why I'm frustrated. Not because you're not providing us information, but the information just continues to paint a bleak picture with no hope for change in this process. I'm all done.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move to our final remarks. And let's just start on this end of the table this time and move around this way. And we just do everybody if you want. That'd be fine. I think it's all right with you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to thank you all for this joint meeting. I think we had a lot of productive conversations. And I want to thank you in advance for fully funding our budget. And on both sides, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we need to collaborate, putting our students and our staff, our employees first as far as us on our school board side. And we cannot do that without the support of City Council. And I just wanted to make a comment. I know we were seeing, how many students we occur, but we also do not forget that we're graduating students every year too. So we're losing a lot, thousands of students, but we still have the same capacity, and even more, because if you add more to it. So I want to put that out there, and thank you all so much. Thank you to my councilman, Mr. Bennett, who's always there, keeping me informed, and we collaborate with each other. And I hope we can move forward. And don't forget John F. Kennedy Playground, Lake Kennedy Playground.
Thank you. I want to just say that I think this has been a good dialogue between the council and the school board, and even though it's been 3 hours, It's a lot of good conversation. And we cannot solve all the problems today, but it gives us some guidelines and some things to look at, what we can work together in the future to try to improve. And I know that setting the priorities is hard, and I know we met before, we was talking about the Elephant Fork School, John F. Kennedy School and all, National River High School. And only thing with that is we only have a certain amount of money. And that's the key to it. And we do have to set we all together should set the priorities, which is which we can fund and move the city forward and educate our kids. They are the future of our city, so we definitely need to continue to support our schools in every way we can to make sure they have the best facilities and teachers and all that we can supply them with. So I hope that this will not end, but we can continue our relationship and conversation among each other and not leave with any negative thoughts in our mind because it's just a conversation. So therefore, whatever is said here today, I think we should not take it as criticism, but take it as a learning process that we all can grow from, and hopefully we can do better. And with that, I hope that everyone enjoy the Easter coming up, and we will celebrate that day. Thank you. I'm finished.
Good evening. So I think that this was a very good start to collaboration. One of the things that I would like to see, though, is that we figure out a way that as we collaborate to be proactive versus reactive in some of the decisions that we make that impact our city as a whole. I am going to second or amen what the school board chair said about having to come up from the rear in some of our decisions. But we have to look forward now and try to figure out a way, again, to be proactive instead of reactive. With that being said, one of the things that was raised tonight was potential grant money or resources that are available. I think that is imperative that when we come together and we try to collaborate as a body to do what's best for the citizens, that we ensure within our individual bodies, we exhaust whatever resources are available, because missed opportunities are just that, missed opportunities. So if different members of the board are aware of grant money or different resources, they do no one any good unless it's socialized and we have an opportunity to take advantage of that, especially in our current federal environment, to help close some of those gaps. But I encourage and look forward to some more meaningful conversations in the future, but I hope that they generate meaningful results. I think Vice Mayor Ward spoke earlier about, we talk about a lot, but I think it is time, and we have a good group of people here that we can start executing on some of the plans that we've discussed in the past. And with that, I will say good night.
So I do agree that there has been some productive conversations between council and the school board today. I particularly am grateful for the funding that City Council is going to provide. The SROs are really important, and I am grateful for both the police department and the sheriff's department's willingness to come to the table to help start rectifying that need for us. And I look forward to us moving forward next year, being able to add even more of those SROs into the mix. Still want to put a plug out there for the teachers and their raises. I feel like we need to make sure that we take care of them. Our students are one of our most precious commodities and resources, I agree, but so are our educators. And our students won't thrive in the classroom if we can't not only recruit but retain the talent that we have here. Listening to the the potential community benefit of looking at some of our elementary properties and having a joint community use of those. I look forward to further conversations on that. I think that's a good way, a good place for us to come together to provide children more opportunities, to be involved in community sports and activities. So with that, I thank you for a good meeting, and I say good night.
I'll be very brief because these allies of mine over here on council have already said it very well. Ebony, thank you. Leroy. Blue, you haven't said anything yet, but I know you're going to say something amazing in a minute. I wanted understood, though, that this council is working for the school system as well as we're working for the city. It's time for all of us to think outside the box. I worry about building schools. I worry about how much we spend doing these things. There's no reason we can't do a better job as a whole. If we have to go outside and find contractors that will work with us or do what we want to do, that's what we need to start thinking. Meanwhile, I don't disagree with what you said about us. We need to respond to where we put these communities, and we need to make the people that build these homes part of the solution. And I've never felt like we make them as much part of the solution as we should. So that's something we will continue to work on. But I go back to that 20% thing just for a minute. I know everybody thinks we stockpile money down there. And I'm back 10 years ago, I was the one that raised the big concern. On council, we not spend this money, we put it away. But I've since come to learn that we have to sit on this money. We have to be prepared for the future, and we have to provide our citizens with a secure government. And that's what we're doing. We don't always agree with what we do, but we're doing it because that's what we have to do. But meanwhile, we have a citizenry to look after. We have schools. Personally, I'd like to see us go back to small schools again for the little people. There's so many good things we can do. But don't think for a minute that we're not behind this school board. We are. You guys are more in the face of the people than we are sometimes, but we really want to see our schools thrive. Our city will thrive as our schools thrive. So I think you've got a really good council here, and I think it's changed a little to the point that I think we're going to do great things. So then I'll say good night.
So I want to thank City Council and board members for a great meeting, as has already been echoed tonight. I think that we come up with great ideas and look at the situations that we're faced with, and I know we are all on the same page. I know we all have the same goal in mind. I think one of the challenges is trying to merge that all together in an effective way that actually produces an outcome. Discussing it is one thing, but actually acting upon it and doing something with it is very important. I think I remember the last 2 years at this time having a very similar discussion about the same issues, and I'm not sure what action was generated out of it. I hope that either we have another meeting that follows up on this with some actionable ideas, or if we can just merge, and I don't know if that'd be the superintendent and the city manager merging some of this together for us. But I think that it is important that we take what was discussed tonight and try and merge it to make it actionable. And one of the things that I want to put out there, and I want to ask of our board chair and our superintendent, when it comes time this next time for the CIP that we vote on as a board to place order of priority in our CIP, I think it'd be very helpful to be given information that merges the condition of our schools, the capacity of our schools, all of that information, along with the projections of the city. So we're taking the two entities and marrying them together, so we, as a board, have all the knowledge that is accessible and available to us when we make that CIP decision. So if we're choosing a moldy school over a school at capacity, we know the condition of all those schools. And sometimes, as board members, we know more about our schools particularly, but not necessarily the other 16 schools that are in the division. So I think it's helpful before we go to that CIP and vote on that CIP, I would like to request that all information that is accessible to us about the condition of our schools and the needs of our schools be married in information that is given to us ahead of time before we vote on that. That's a request that I'd like to see happen. I do understand the SRO situation and the budget, and I do want to thank you all in advance for the budget and for fully funding us. I am grateful for that.
One clarity, I do also understand that the point that has been made, Mr. Bennett, and also Mr. Moore, a couple times tonight about knowing that these projections that are put out for the students, that it's over a time span of 10 years. But I just want to look at this information that was given to us tonight for Kings Fork High School. Kings Fork added over 190 students in the last 5 to 6 years. So it's happened in a quicker pace than 10 to 30 years. Nansemond Rivers added over 100 in the last 5-6 years. So even though it could be 10 years, it could be longer than that, none of us have that crystal ball to tell that. So I think that on this end, when it comes to the CIP for us and also for the city, when you're looking at developing and planning, we all need to take into consideration these, where we're heading, where we anticipate it coming down the road, so it's not an urgent fire situation that we're trying to respond to now, because we know nothing happens in a quick moment. So if we decide today our capacity is one thing at a school, and we know that the house is already burning, it's gonna take years before we can even get to put the fire out. So I think we need to, on both sides, take a look at that, and I believe that's what Chair Howell was trying to address from the city side, but the school system can also do a better job of that by marrying this information that we get every year into our CIP. And then I will say one other thing. I'm gonna shamelessly put out a little plug here, and my counterpart may add into it. I don't know, or she's probably already added into it. But when we're talking about the fields and the joint use agreements and everything, aside from that, there's a need for the city for these fields. I understand the deficit. I want to put a shameless plug out there for the Glasscock Farm in the Chuckatuck Borough, that perhaps that can be developed and expedited and pushed forward more rapidly to fulfill some of these needs that the city has for some of these fields, because I know that that's what that property was designated for, and I would really love to see that happen rapidly for our borough. So thank you very much.
So the first thing I want to say is I did not pay her to say that. So. Most of you, well, many of you know that the Glasscock property in Chuckatuck is a high priority for me. The idea that the family has had is to preserve some open space, but also to provide active play, and it is sorely needed, and we can't have enough sports opportunities for our kids. As far as tonight, we all have the priority of our children. I don't think there's any question that that's a priority for all of us. We've raised a lot of challenging issues. We have a great group of people assembled here. I think if we work together, we can work through some of them. Unfortunately, with the growth, and it bothers me as much as anybody, until there's less demand, people are going to want to move here, and they're going to want to buy the new houses, so that there's pressure to build more houses. And some of them are getting done by right. It's not anything that City Council has any jurisdiction over. We do rezonings that increase the density to try to keep the sprawl in the growth areas, which puts pressure on the schools, and we recognize that. But on some of these developments, it's things that have been in the works for years that are going to go ahead. It's not, we can't always say no. But to the mayor's point, sometimes we can say, maybe we can slow down, or maybe we can require more proffers, or not require because we can't require them, but that we can ask the developers to put more in for the schools. So there's plenty of things to be done, but we can't always do everything that we wish that we could do. That's an understatement, I guess. But I really appreciate the fact that we're having this meeting, that we're together. I also want to highlight the fact that our education committee has met, and I think that was a really productive meeting, and I think that is a really less cumbersome way for the two bodies to relate to each other, because it's less people and more time for more intense discussions. And I hope that group is going to have a big impact on how our two bodies work together. So again, just thanks for everybody's input and for everybody's willingness to work together, and hopefully we can move some things along. Good night.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for you and your team for their presentations. Dr. Gordon, same. Well job to your team. To all the city council folks at the table, thank you guys. It's an honor that you guys awarded us our full budget. I think that's a big statement for all the citizens to see that you do support kids. So hand salute to you guys for that. Councilman Williams, thank you for all our collaboration that we've had. I want to continue it. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and insight with me. And hey, let's take this and not stovepipe it. You know, we gotta keep working it, keep having these discussions. They might be tough, but hey, it's part of the, you know, it comes with our job. So thank you again, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Superintendent, and your staff for putting together a great presentation. I can honestly say that this night has been one of the best joint meetings that we've had thus far. To my counterpart here, you know, we're going to do things to make the Wellerville Borough and the city move in a more positive way. I do have one question that I didn't ask earlier, but as it relates to the starting teacher's salary of $56,975. My question is, how is that in comparison to our neighboring cities?
We would be right around in the middle of the pack, probably fifth or sixth. It is our goal, as we shared with the board, Mr. Williams, that our original goal was to get us to $60,000 a year until we saw how much money we weren't at the time getting from the state. Now, some of the new projections, we may be able to get some more, and the promise that we've made to the board, because all of us are advocating for the same thing, if we are able to raise that amount to a 5 to 5.5% increase, depending on the money, we're hoping to be close to 60,000, which some of our neighboring school divisions are doing. So hopefully we will know more information by May 2nd.
All right, thank you. And with that, I would say good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief, too. I concur this has been a very productive meeting. A lot of good stuff has come out. We're a little bit like two people that are in separate cars, but we want to get to the same destination, and we're pretty good about traveling the same road together until we get to a fork in the road. And every now and then, the school board goes to the right and we go to the left, but I think ultimately, we do eventually kind of come back together. And so I would just encourage us to continue this mutual dialogue. The answers, the questions are easy, the answers are complicated. And so, like I say, I would just encourage us to continue this dialogue. And with that, I will say good night. Mr. Mayor, can I skedaddle? I promised somebody, another group, I'd be at their place at 8 o'clock.
Okay, you're late.
I'd like to say that as the newbie sitting at this table, a lot of what we've discussed has been something that I really have to consider, so issues that I have to really consider to really grasp the full intent of them. But what I've learned by being here tonight is that there are lots of issues. There are lots of work that needs to be done, and resources are limited. There are lots of decisions that need to be made, and you all have already had a history with them, and you've worked on them, and you've done a marvelous job with running Suffolk Public Schools and with running the city, from my perspective, thus far. So I appreciate all the work that has gone into the discussion, all the work that has gone into addressing and solving the issues that are faced by the city and by Suffolk, the school board. I look forward to moving forward with working with the city, with working with the city council, with working with the school board to address the issues. But as Vice Mayor Ward has said, I'd like to see us working futuristically, moving the city ahead futuristically, not just doing what we've always done or maintaining what we already have, but looking at what we will need for the future, for our students, for our citizens. And that's my hope, that we will focus more on moving the city, and especially the school board, ahead to meet the needs of the citizens. I again thank the council for funding the budget. I commend Dr. Gordon and Mrs. Forsman, you are my Shiva. I'm just telling you, because the work that went into putting that budget together was obvious to me, even as a newbie. And the team, you and your team, exactly, because it wasn't just you. But thank you to the council again for funding that budget. And I'm hopeful that it will meet the needs of our students, the students of Suffolk Public Schools. Thank you to everybody this was a good collaboration tonight. I'm privileged to have been a part of it. Nobody flew off the handle or got upset or was too emotional about the issues, and that was a good thing. But I'm very proud to have been a part of this, and I look forward to working collaboratively with the school board and with the council, and I hope that we'll be able to do that again, to have another forum like this soon. I don't know how it works. I don't know if there's one scheduled, but it seems like it's necessary, and it seems like we've made a lot of progress. A lot of progress was made here today. So I look forward to having more of these in the future. So with that, I'll say good night. Thank you.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking because a lot of things be said. I don't say much, but I can talk, trust me, okay? And I sit around and listen, and I observe. But a few people around me know I can talk. But I try to be respectful as possible, and like to know what I'm talking about, and have reason to talk about. I've been on this council like 12 years. I've seen a lot. I haven't said a lot. The last 4, I'm gonna say what I want to say how I say it, and my age, I got the right to say it. I'm gonna say it. I want to say this here. We got officials. We got the superintendent, the mayor, the city manager, the 2 lawyers. We got a good team. These guys are good. We are blessed to have the superintendent and the mayor. Yes, we are blessed to have these 2 guys. Because they can put words in all kind of ways, and even sound good, so you have to almost agree. Okay, well, think about it. Okay. And they know it.
Did you forget the city manager?
I'm not age, I'm gonna say what I want to say.
I don't know if that's
This
a compliment or not.
see, I don't like people say, well, the same routine. This is one of the best meetings. We didn't have no good meetings in the past. No, we didn't. We'll go, that's the truth, we'll go and talk about this and talk about that, and we haven't done nothing. We are the future. We sitting here, 20, 30 years, they're gonna say, why they didn't do this? We have the opportunity. Y'all get elected like I get elected. We got responsibilities. I got a borough. Y'all got a borough. You got people that voted for you. And everybody don't, it's you know, I go in that poll, and sometimes my hand go like this, because it ain't easy to vote sometimes. It's just not easy. But I'm saying this all this here because times are different right now. And Dr. Gordon, I appreciate you. I really do. Mike, Mayor, I appreciate you. I really do. City manager, okay. I just don't like to waste talent. I just don't like to waste talent. We're here. Let's get it done. You know my elephant force. You know about these schools. How can we get it done? Okay, if we can't get it done, why we don't leave it to somebody else? This the plan to get it done. We already know the problem. We just sit on the problem. And I have a problem with that. I really do have a problem with it, because everybody say I'm aggressive and this, and that, I'm an agitator, all this. But don't sometimes you get tired of hearing the same stuff? I get tired of saying, oh, you're right, and I know you're wrong. I'm not gonna tell you that. You know, I'm not gonna do it. I think at the age now, I got the right to do it again, if I don't say what I wanna say. But this has been a start of a good relationship. I want to see, we have another meeting, and we talking about the same thing. What are we doing? What have we done? It seems like everybody want to know the information. What's this go? Where that go? I just don't operate like that. I'm loyal to my friends, my family. I like that. I look out, you know. I hate to see people. You got new people coming on. You got certain people talking about answers. Let's get the job done. I like to get the job done. And me and my Councilman Williams, Councilman Johnson, he know we talking about what we gonna do. I hear his side. He hear my side. I think Tim was one time. I used to, when he first came on, well, Councilman Ward trying to say this. I'm saying. But he was on target, he was on the school line trying to go. That was fine. Mr. Williams, Councilman Williams hold me down. I'm just, let's get this done. So we don't have to say this is one of the best meetings. We gotta feel each other. Let's get it. Everybody got talent. Everybody's best certain things they do. As people listen, hear me, but don't listen to me. That's all right. I'm used to that. Okay, I'm used to that. That don't bother me at all. I'm glad to reach this age where I have an excuse to say what I want to say. I just wanted to say this here, and it's not no disrespect, but I'm actually my friend Dr. Boyd. I just want to know this because I don't know, and forgive me, sometimes I do come to the school board meeting. But you had a meeting about a month or so ago, and they talked about the African American class credit. Tell me more about what is really, because some people you talk and they don't really know what you're talking about. You know, I just wanted to know that. I got another question I want to ask, because I felt like when I sat in the back, there was a young man who called me up. He was in my borough. And the question, that was right after January. And he's one of the young guys, I think, when I leave, I want him to have my seat ready. He's one of the guys I want very active in the community. And he said, Vice-Mayor Ward, how is council going to respond to what's going on in our government with the nation, with the new laws? I told him, and I said strong, I said, I don't think you have to worry about my council. I think our council is going to worry about Suffolk. We're going to do Suffolk. I attend one meeting after the police awards, and I sat here in the back. And he's left. Board Member Riddick asked a question about some letter he wanted sent to the government or governor or something. You know, I know you know what I'm talking about, Superintendent. You're going to be clear that I might not be saying it right. And what happened was, I sat there, and there was a lot of talking, but the talking, what to me, you know, I'm saying, okay, I understand it. And what he was trying to do, I looked at him and said, all he wanted was say, this is about the city of Suffolk not agreeing with some of the things going with the school department and education department, stuff like that. And, you know, it took a tight vote. And some of the questions was answered. I would like to talk with them. I didn't talk with them, but I wanted to know why, because, and one of the things he did say, and he was right, he said, the people that voted you here in Suffolk, they want you to react to Suffolk. That national stuff, that's fine. But we can't concentrate on the national stuff and that party stuff. No, we gotta make sure that these kids in Suffolk get the education they do to. And I might not be saying it in a way you want, but I believe that education especially in the African-American community, is the key. And the opportunity is here with the team that we have. I think we should make sure they are priorities. They number one. And I want to thank the chair because she said something that hit me. She said, after they spoke, she said she teaches, I think she teaches handicap. Okay? And she said, with all what's going on, I know how they're gonna be cut or whatever, what we're gonna have to go at. I got a brother that's handicapped. Okay? I might have a granddaughter that might be handicapped. So I know what the importance that is in the school. And I appreciate you, because I don't know, I think it might have passed, I don't know, but I know the dialogue was there, but I don't know the heart was there. We ain't got to worry about all that other stuff. My concern is my borough, National Borough, and the whole city of Suffolk. And especially the school. I might not be on the school board, but whatever my first interest, before I even try to do anything, the importance of the school, by coming from one state to the next state, I knew the importance of the school, how I live here. So I know y'all don't wanna, y'all listen, but I want you to hear me and just take some of the stuff that you think fits you. So Dr. Gordon, I don't know what happened with that vote for the Black History credit thing. Could you give me some more on that? What can be done, or is it what did pass? I don't know.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Ward, the conversation centered around if African American history was going to be a substitute elective for graduation. And the school board discussion centered around that option because it was a General Assembly topic. So basically, the point of Mr. Riddick bringing it up as a part of the legislative committee was to get the school board's stance. Now, basically, it was just going to be Suffolk Public Schools' stance because the General Assembly was going to end up making their own decisions anyway. And they end up supporting it being an alternative. They actually changed it from U.S. history to world history, too. So that was the first part. The second part was to get Suffolk Public Schools' stance on supporting the Department of Education, since we know that a bill was presented to terminate the Department of Education by December 31st of 2026. And there's already been a 50% layoff in the Department of Education, which is some of the questions that Ms. Butler-Barlow had asked earlier when it comes to funding. So the conversation was about what was Suffolk Public Schools' stance is going to be from the board perspective, what concerns were there with the current Department of Education, which changes can be made, and potentially where some of the money would go. And that was a discussion, and then some votes that took forward in order to be able to send a letter of support to our senators and our Congress people that represent Virginia.
I just want to say in my closing, I just want to say it's a pleasure working with y'all leadership. I respect y'all utmost. Because I can talk to y'all and y'all give me some answers, clear answers, not real answers. And I appreciate it, especially the city staff, top of the line. And then we go out in other places and they brag, they give us kudos. Something is doing it. Something, you're right. This is something. We got rules and regulations. This is something. And we get the kudos that we get them. The mayor know it, councilman know it, we know it. They're proud. They talk about something in a positive way. We don't have to keep following them. Now they might follow some things. We know. There's a lot of things going on, like the recreation, all that. You know, we talk about competing with Virginia Beach or the Chesapeake. That's what we do. We got things that we can fill in that we're not doing that they have. Let's get it done. That's all I want to say. And my council always say, God bless.
Dr. Gordon, would you like to add anything before we close? And we'll let Chair Howell.
Well, I imagine y'all heard enough from me tonight. I mean, I have a sense of humor and humility about myself. I realize that I'm not everyone's cup of tea when I get fired up. I want to say thank you to our staff and the city staff, especially our staff, because they're going to be back at it tomorrow night, and I will do my best to keep us on pace. I pinky promise. I want to thank my counterpart, Councilmember Wright. I have a great deal of hope in the next 4 years on productivity, at least between our partnership, you know. We can't control everything that's going on everywhere, but I have confidence and gratitude for her. I believe that, really, thank you for the city council for hosting this, allowing this, and I look forward to doing it and taking steps, as Vice Mayor Ward said, to be productive and not just sit here and talk quarterly for hours. With that, I wish you all a good evening, and, well, the weekend's just around the corner, so have a safe weekend.
Okay, I'll go and wrap it up, and I will be brief. I do want to thank the city manager and the superintendent, because they're the ones that are really responsible for making this happen. And also, when we go through the budget process, there have been times in the past, and I've been doing it for more than 12 years, but the difference is the communication that the manager has with the superintendent. The manager comes up with his budget, the superintendent has his budget, and they need to be in the same zip code before it comes to us. It has to be something reasonable. It has to be something feasible. It has to be something that we can financially do. And I appreciate the work that they have done, because I know they're doing it. I mean, I haven't asked, but I know they have. And that's why the budget came to us. Yeah, it's another $7 million, but it's in the ballpark. The manager knows, we can make it happen. The requests are reasonable, so it just flies the way it's supposed to fly. Lots of times we talk about, priorities in schools and numbers, and it's all really pretty frustrating. Not just frustrating from the school board, but frustrating from our point. It's not, I don't think there's an issue with anyone gathered around right now to decide on our priorities, or that we haven't made a conscious effort to try to address issues, but it's a matter of resources. So you get frustrated. We know what we got to do. Somebody write the check. Well, it's just not that easy. In our budget, in our needs, and when I say our needs, we talk about our citizens, and we serve the same constituents. It is the taxpayers' money. There's nothing that belongs to me. There's nothing that belongs to us. There's nothing that belongs to the city. I get people all the time, well, the city's just money hungry. And I say to myself, well, who is the city? I mean, my last name's not City. I don't see nothing. The city is the citizens. And it's the myriad of needs that are spread across our city, anywhere from Wayville to Harborview to Holy Neck to downtown. And we look at all these needs, be it roads, be it schools, be it park and rec, be it lights. I mean, you just name it. It never stops. So we feel the frustration. This was a great meeting. I mean, I say a great meeting. It was a good meeting. We talked about some things, the joint uses to a few folks' points. I mean, it's something we need to start the conversation on now. It's one thing I've learned. You can't finish anything you don't start. So we'll start, and we will make it work. I know we can make that work. And it's something that will serve our citizens well, that they can physically see, they can physically take advantage of, that we can do for a minimal amount of money. I don't want to get into the budget and everything else, but another thing to remember about these reserves, we get investment income on these reserves. That money just doesn't sit in a pot, it's invested. The treasurer invests that money. So we're getting 4.5%, 5% on money that's sitting in these reserves. That money goes into that budget. That budget trickles down even to the school system. So it's not like it's just sitting there collecting dust. We need to take that into consideration. And, I'm optimistic. I mean, there's no question that we want to do as much as we can with what we have. I'm elated that we did have a very productive education committee meeting, and this is something we can do in a smaller group, and with ever, dialogue we have that goes back to the bodies can discuss it in totality and then bring back to us, and it's just a way to expedite the process without going through 3 hours and some change or whatever. So, I mean, it works. That's why they have the committees. You go to Richmond, everything's a committee. It starts at that committee, that committee, that committee, and then somewhere along the line, somebody actually votes on it. So once again, I want to thank everyone for their attendance. I thank everyone for their comments. And I look forward to continue to do the people's work, and that's kind of what we do. You know, you focus on the kids, and we try to make all the rest of it happen and help you along the way. So with that, if there's no other business that needs to be brought forward, this meeting is. Ms. Wright, are you all right with that? Oh, yeah. Can you say adjourn?
Adjourn.
Good.
I'm ready to go home. I'm tired. My day started.